Commissioners of the City of Mount Juliet will have a public hearing on September 11th, 2023 at 6:15 to consider the following items on second and final reading. The first one is to amend Part B of the Unified Development Code zoning ordinance by amending Section 2103, definitions of land use activities, Section 3103, detailing activities listed, and Section 6102, uses and structures to permit breweries and microbreweries in select commercial districts. The second item is to amend the zoning ordinance, Article 6, Commercial District Regulations, Section 6102, uses and structures, mixed uses, remove restricted area. If anyone would like to address the Board of Commissioners on these two items, I'd invite you to come forward and give your name and address for the record, excuse me. If you have anything else you'd like to discuss with the Board of Commissioners or doing commissioner comments, we will have commissioner comments again at our regular scheduled meeting. But if you want to address the commission on these two items, I invite you to come forward. All right. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll reconvene at 6:30 for our regular scheduled meeting. Hello. We got bonus material time. I've got a proclamation here tonight that I want to issue, and this is an important subject. It's Suicide Prevention Month, and we have a proclamation here from the city. And I'm not going to read all of this, but I'll pick a few sections here that are really relevant, and I think they kind of strike home. One of them is that suicide is the 9th leading cause of death in Tennessee, and the second leading cause of death among youth ages 10 to 14, as well as young adults 25 to 34, third leading cause of death. And it applies to children ages 15 through 24. So it's an important subject, and I want to recognize the month here and just encourage everyone that's if you see someone struggling, reach out to them, just ask, how can I help? Is there anything we can do? And of course, always, reach out, get the help that they need. And there's various organizations out here that can help. Would you like to add anything?
I'm Brenda Harper, and I'm a volunteer with the Tennessee Suicide Prevention Network. And one of the things we do 12 months of the year is try to promote awareness about suicide and that it's real and it's happening, even though we don't like to talk about it because it's not a topic that's pleasant to talk about. But one of the things that we do is part of that awareness is right here in Mount Juliet. There's a sign right next to the tree between the museum and the post office, and we have a remembrance tree where people can take a piece of ribbon. They can write the name of somebody that's been lost and tie it on that tree. It's a quiet way to remember those that we've lost. In Tennessee in 2021, we lost 1,219 people to suicide. So that's just in our state. That doesn't count the United States. So it's a fight that we've got to keep fighting. So we appreciate the support.
Yeah. Thank you for doing what you do in this. And while it's not always an easy subject to discuss, it is something that's touched so many, and it's definitely something that we want to see those numbers drop down and give people the help they need.
Thank you so much.
Would you join us for a photo up here?
I'd love to.
Anything around this?
Good evening. Welcome to the Mount Juliet Board of Commissioners. Today is September 11th, 2023, and I'll hereby call this meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order. We do have a quorum present. All of our elected officials here are present, so we can, pursuant to city code, we can conduct the business of the city of Mount Juliet. So I'll start off by saying welcome and thank you for attending. Everyone that's here to watch the meeting and observe. Is your right by Tennessee state law to attend tonight, and we do, of course, welcome you to it and ask that you, we have a few rules that we will go over as we do in citizen comments. But with that, just want to thank you for taking the time to be here tonight. Our first item that is on the agenda is the set agenda. I will say we have an ordinance here before us that's been on the table. I'm going to make a motion that we add this ordinance to the tail of the agenda. Have a second? All right. All in favor of adding the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That is amended. It's an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2023 budget ordinance 2023-24 to appropriate funds for the city's portion of the northern roadway improvements per the Costco development agreement. That will be heard as our final item on the agenda tonight. If you were here and don't have a copy, we have some copies in the wire basket. If you're at home following along online, we have copies of the agenda too. It's kind of the guide for what we're going to take on tonight. So without the amendment, we had a 116-page packet. This will increase a little bit. So we have 4 items on unfinished business, and the one we added will make an 8th item on new business. So our next item is our invocation and pledge of allegiance. I'm going to ask our PIO office, our public information officer, Mr. Justin Beasley, if he would, to come to the podium and lead us in the invocation and pledge, please.
Thank you, Mayor. If y'all will stand with me while we pray. Lord, we thank you for this night that we can come together, Lord, and continue to improve our city. We thank you for our elected body and the time and resources and energy that they give this city. We thank you for our city management as well and the wealth of experience and hard work that they bring to the table, Lord. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the people in this room that will serve on commissioner comments or just to speak on behalf of certain projects, Lord. There's so much involvement, so much activity within this city, and we're so grateful for it because we know that you've had your hand in that. Lord, we also want to think about those that were impacted and the lives lost on 9/11 so many years ago in 2001. Lord, a tough day for many people. Just please be close to the brokenhearted. Please watch over them and guide them. Lord, we are forever changed as a country for the better from that day. And we thank you for the security that you ultimately provide us. Lord, it's also Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. Lord, we know that you're the one that provides us hope and healing, and you're the Prince of Peace, Lord. So we rest in that fact. Lord, just give us your wisdom to see those that are going through things, and maybe it's just a word of encouragement or lending out or just sending a text to a friend that might be the difference maker. Lord, help us to find those situations where we can plug into the gap and find a way to improve someone's day, Lord. Be with us in our decision-making tonight. May we just lean on your wisdom and not our intellect and make the best decisions for our city going forward. It's in your holy and precious name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, unto the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley. The next item on our agenda is approval of the minutes. This is from the Board of Commissioner meeting, the one from last month on August 28th. Is there a motion? Have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion on the minutes? All in favor of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? The minutes carry. Next item is citizen comments. And in order to conduct a business-like meeting, we just have a few items that we would ask you to adhere to as we do this. Please direct any comments or questions to me. We may or may not be able to answer the question from the table. If we can't, I'll do my best to get somebody that can address any questions you have. Please begin your presentation by giving us your name and address, and please address, like I said, all things through me, and then also please avoid any inappropriate language, profanity, or anything else. But once this citizen comment portion of the meeting is over, unlike the Planning Commission, there's generally not another opportunity to address the Board of Commissioners. So with that, if you'd like to address the Board of Commissioners, I'll open the floor up. You can come to the podium, please, and give your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Jessica Stoico. I live on 82 East Hill Street, so just up the street here. Mayor Manis, you are smiling. I think you know what I am commenting about, but it is further on the agenda for this evening, so I wanted to speak on ordinance 10.2, which is on the agenda for today. That's about developing East Hill Street and East Caldwell Street, which is this street, including this building. I have a couple notes, so let me just open this real quick. The main thing is that I wanted to make sure that you know that this is our home. I am a property owner. I'm a property taxpayer. My family lives in this home. I have 2 small children under the age of 5. And one of the reasons that we purchased a home in this neighborhood is because it is quiet, it is safe, and we have a close-knit community. And putting a large portion of more apartments and flattening some of the existing homes will not only force some of these families who are living in our community to move so that they can have more affordable housing and they can continue to have space for their families. Many of the families on our roads have children and enjoy playing in the yard. So if they are forced to move into an apartment, if they don't want to sacrifice location, they're not going to be able to have space for their children to play and their dogs to go outside and things like that. I'm also concerned because we really enjoy letting our 4-year-old ride her bike and walking to the library and things like that that you get in a smaller, safer community. Putting in a large development like this right at the end of our street is going to dramatically increase traffic and make that unsafe for my small children. And I know that we're not the only ones in the neighborhood with that concern. And then I also want to point out that we were not well consulted. I believe that there should have been some kind of a mailer or distribution to all the homes in this area because the private homeowners were not aware of any of these issues. And not all of us, most of us have, 40, 50, 60-hour work weeks and don't have a chance to read the newspaper every day and things like that. So I suggest in future for things like this that affect specific neighborhoods, sending out a mailer to those homes and allowing an appropriate amount of time for response, letting us know when these meetings are. I understand that the meetings have a standing date, but knowing which meetings to attend can be confusing. And then also just reminding everyone that all of these construction projects also affect the wildlife in the area. I already have a large garden that is being completely decimated by the deer because of the construction in the area. I've gone 2 years running with a full garden and gotten no produce because the deer are being kicked out of their homes. This is going to make it worse.
Well, thank you for your comments. If I'm not, Ms. Johnson, notices, are the letters mailed second reading? I know state law dictates.
Yes, sir, they do come out second reading. They generally will go out with planning commission as just as a, to consult with the local neighborhood and everything, but they are required by second reading at BOC.
Thank you. Anyone else to address the Board of Commissioners?
Hi, my name's Karen Sweet. I live at 60 East Caldwell Street. I, like my neighbor on the next block, am very concerned about the project for ordinance 10.2. We have we're a family. We have small children under the age of 5. Also, there's no sidewalks. The kids are used to playing in the front yard. They ride their bicycles on the street because we have a dead end street. It's only 1 block long. We're used to the privacy and security of being in a very quiet neighborhood, and knowing that half a block away from us is now going to be a 4-story, 200+ unit apartment is very concerning for myself. And I just talked today with one of my neighbors. He's elderly. He's not able to attend today. But when I told him about this, he was very unaware and devastated. I also have a neighbor on the other side of me that I spoke with recently. She was also very concerned, but she said, this is what Mount Juliet does now. And it was very disheartening for me. She's been here many years, and she said, this is what Mount Juliet does now. And I don't know, when we moved in and when I saw the sign that said Mount Juliet Proud on the IMS building, and the nice city hall right on Mount Juliet Road, and I have family members that come and visit, and we take a walk down the street around the block, and we go to a little antique little shop there. And to me, it felt at home right away. I mean, I just love this neighborhood. I love this town. And I feel like even though I've been here a short time, and I feel like that's all slipping away right under my nose. And it's very disheartening. And so I, as you, pray to God that you people will find gardens and not just look at it as a financial change and a financial improvement for the town, but for the fact that you're going to lose a lot if you put this giant structure in there. A lot of the loving neighborhood feel of this town will be decimated by this change that you're going to be making. You have an opportunity here now to do something very wonderful, to represent Mount Juliet and the city hall, to be a monumental, idealistic of what you want this town to be. And I think that's all lost. The plans, as I see them now, that you're not even planning on having City Hall on Mount Juliet Road. It's going to be smothered in between a 4-story building and a little storefront or something. It's like, I think that this town, in seeing these plans, I think they've lost their way. And I pray to God that you will all find your way back and vote for better plans for the future for this town. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Jessica Sweet. I live at 60 East Caldwell, so just up the road. I'm also here to comment about the 10.2 ordinance about the new downtown city block. I think most people in Mount Juliet can agree, we'd love to see a more walkable downtown space, something that kind of promotes people being able to come together. But just the way that the current plans are laid out, just are so concerning for me as a homeowner, and as someone that's going to be in that neighborhood. As the infrastructure is now, I know y'all are aware, is completely insufficient for that. Even the current plans are concerning. There's currently not an exit for our subdivision out the back. We can only come out through Hill or Caldwell. Even if those are widened during construction of that, how are we going to get out of our neighborhoods? When this comes up, that many apartments, it's Mount Juliet had felt like such a place for family for me when I moved here. And these new plans to me don't speak anything that my family with 2 young children would be able to participate or enjoy in. And I hope that y'all take that into account and don't just look at a place to have more families come, but some amenities and things for the families that are currently here to be able to enjoy and appreciate for our town.
Thank you. I will add, unrelated to this project, I know it will impact your neighborhood as well. Hill Street is slated to connect all the way through to Clemens Road here very soon. So it's not related to this project, but it's too many years for me to remember exactly. Yeah. Is there anyone else that'd like to address the Board of Commissioners? All right, hearing none, we'll close citizen comments and we'll move on to commissioner reports and comments. And with that, I'll recognize Commissioner Scott Hefner for his comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate everybody coming out tonight, especially those that live in the neighborhood, surrounding areas, and those tuning in. Other than that, I have no report. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. We'll move to Commissioner Mullally.
Thank you. Today, of course, it's 9/11, as we all know. So I hope every one of us, some of you probably too young, but anyway, I know everyone knows what it is. So I hope everyone took some time today to think back and reflect about what actually happened on our American soil back in 2001. And again, also, I would like to thank all the visitors here today. And whether you have an interest in something on the agenda, or you just come and sit and watch how local government works, like my friend here, she came she didn't have anything to say, she just came and watched. And I think everyone should take an interest in their local government and come and sit and just listen and see how the city operates. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll now recognize Commissioner Justice.
As like the others, want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I see Commissioner Mullally's pickleball partner out there is as much of a beast on the pickleball court as Commissioner Mullally. Sharon is also. So welcome to all of you. I do want to say something about 9/11. I remember many years ago, there was a whole thing about 9/11, never forget. I remember saying it, never forget it. Unfortunately, I think a lot of us have forgotten it. And it's sad because I remember when it happened, and I remember how much of a tragedy it was. And then out of that tragedy grew a unity that came as a result of it. It was one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen in the United States. It was unbelievable. It didn't matter if you were a Democrat, if you were a Republican. It didn't matter if you were Kenny Martin. It was something that grew and brought everybody together because we had a common goal, a common enemy. And what they had done to our country, it upset people, greatly upset people. I see today that we don't have a common enemy, so we turn on ourselves. And it's upsetting. The unity that I saw come as a result of that tragedy has gone away, and now people fight each other because they don't have another enemy. So they go looking for one. We don't do that in Mount Juliet. Sometimes it's perceived that we do, but that's not what we do in Mount Juliet. Look for the common good. Look for a reason to come together and look for a reason to unite and be of one rather than go at each other's throats. I don't have to agree with you politically. But if you're in our town, city that I was raised in, that I love, you're my neighbor and you're my friend, and I'm gonna do everything I can do to help you. Don't have to agree with you, but we do want to help out. So I'll say this, 9/11, what happened, 9/11, 2001, let's don't forget. And let's don't forget what happened afterwards. That being said, I want to say happy birthday to my daughter, Brooklyn. She is 18 years old this weekend. She claims to be an adult until I told her she was going to have to start paying rent and a car note and insurance. She decided she was just going to be daddy's daughter after all, so she bypassed that. I want to thank Miss Brenda Harper for being here for suicide prevention. And it's been many years that Miss Brenda's spent for this particular cause. Her heart's in it. If you know somebody that has a problem, has an issue, has something that they want to work through, if they say things that alarm you, there is a number to call. And I apologize, I don't have that number. We can get you that number. You can call the police department, get that number. They've got it on speed dial. Don't hesitate. Don't take a chance. Don't say, well, I just wasn't sure what they were going to do, and then wait till the next morning and find out they did what you thought they might do. That's a day late. So all that being said, welcome to the meeting. And hopefully we get things done here tonight and everybody's going to be happy, or at least not angry when we get done.
And I think you have a birthday coming up.
Thursday. Yes, sir.
All right. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Next, I'll recognize our Vice Mayor Trevette.
Thank you, Mayor, and happy birthday to Brooklyn and also you, Commissioner Justice. Oh, absolutely. That's great. Happy birthday, both you guys. So, yeah. And no, thank you for the folks that came out tonight and also that are watching online. And also the folks that came out, obviously want to give their, their thoughts pertaining to whatever projects that are out there. It's always difficult to get up there and express your emotions and some time of, accepting change. We've got a lot of projects that are going on in my development or in actually my community, that are, obviously letting us see that change, which sometimes is painful. And I agree. Now, Juliet is one of the reasons why we moved here was because of that small town feel. So, unfortunately, people do have the right though to buy the land, and they have the ability to do what they want as long as they're following the rules, regulations, and code and laws. So, that's like one of the things that we always got to be thinking about. So, but yeah, no, it's change is always difficult, and sometimes it's for the best, sometimes it's not always for the best. But I'm definitely hearing you, and I appreciate you guys coming out tonight. Obviously, yes, the board did talk about tonight with today, and I agree with Commissioner Justice. For many years, we always did talk about never forgetting, and then here these last couple years, it's been sad that some people have even said that we need another something like 9/11 to be bringing this country back together. As sad as that is. And, for me, the whole purpose of this, and my family, when we see the men and women that are out there serving and protecting our communities, and even our military, it's always been something, really close to my heart that we go out of our way to thank every one of them. Because for all of us, we lay our heads down at night, we just take it for granted that, that we're going to be protected. And it's sad that, it seems like every generation has got a major event that, that's life changing or just something that makes us all appreciate what we do have. And unfortunately, that was something that, that's going to be stuck in my head for the rest of my life of where I was and, and, and how it changed our family and our country. So, prayers to all those family members that are still struggling with that. The suicide awareness, that was very close to my heart. With our family, we've experienced something like that with a very close family member. So, yes, absolutely. You think it never happened to your family, and you think that you guys got a tight knit family, and then all of a sudden something happens where somebody makes a bad choice. So, bring it, speak up. That's all I can say. Speak up. So, thank you all for coming out tonight. Continue to shoot me the emails, the phone calls. Sometimes I may be a little bit slow. It's as fast as some homeowners want. I'm not Amazon. I'm not Jimmy John freaky fast. But I will do my best to respond back as quick as possible. But I do appreciate all of the folks that have reached out to me. I guess these last couple of weeks on all their different concerns, and hopefully I haven't missed anybody. So, Mayor, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll start out by saying I want to welcome everybody and thank you again for attending here, especially the ones that spoke. I know it's not always the easiest thing to get up and speak about, especially when they impact you and impact your home so closely as well. But I feel like I need to take just a moment here and address the last meeting. I don't normally leave in the middle of meetings. I was sitting here as we were on the middle of an item and just got that text that no one wants, which essentially said, your uncle has 12 to 24 hours to live. So at that point, I appreciate the vice mayor for taking over the meeting. And I just want to add, thank you everyone that's reached out for the prayers, the wealth, the thoughts. He did in fact pass the next day, but I just want to again thank everybody who's reached out, all the kind words, the stuff. The city's been very gracious all through this whole moment that's impacted the family. It's one of those things that's difficult, but it's also no one wants to see a loved one suffer. So appreciate it and just thank you all for all the grace that you've extended to me and my family. And I was also going to mention that it is 9/11, and I think like so many of you, I can remember exactly where I was that day, exactly what I was thinking, exactly where, it just all played out, not knowing exactly how that was going to impact changed my life. Started questioning things about, I had no children at that point and what it would be like to raise children in a post 9/11 world. You didn't know it at the time, the level of impact it would have and how it would change things, but it truly has. And it's one of those things now, and being involved with the city has given me so much respect for those that are running to the emergencies. And I don't think we can pause enough to honor them and what they do for us to keep our community safe, to put themselves voluntarily in harm's way. And we've seen that play out just here recently with the fire that we had at Glass Creek Apartments, that the fire that occurred there. The building's on fire. We've got first responders running in to get people out, make sure those rooms are cleared. And we had a firefighter who was injured in that, and we're all very thankful that he's returned home. But again, that's just another example here locally of somebody putting themselves in harm's way. And I've talked with a number of people about that, and they said, you don't, if you're the incident commander in there, that's their job to go and make sure that thing is cleared until every soul in that building's accounted for. And that's one right there locally that we can point to. So while it might not have been the same magnitude as a terrorist attack, it's the same principle. They're running to harm's way. So I commend them, and I commend them in everything they do. And I just encourage everyone out there to join with me. And if you see someone, thank them for the sacrifices that they make. It's not just what they do on the clock. It's what it does. It's how it impacts the family. It's the hours that they work. So anyway, that'll conclude my comments, and recognize our city manager for his.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Thanks for everybody that's here tonight and those watching from home. We appreciate you. Mayor, you will continue to be in your family and our thoughts and prayers going forward as you grieve and continue to heal. And also, one of our employees here at City Hall had lost their mom. And so we'll be praying for them as well as they make the travels to be with friends and family and continue that process as well. For any of us who've been through that, we know how tough that is. And it makes it puts, I guess, first and foremost, what it is that we serve and why we serve others as public servants and stewards of this community. Speaking of 9/11, I echo the sentiments of everybody here tonight and those at home and everybody else, how you feel about that. So I have a challenge for those in our community to post a flag, American flag, year round if you can buy one, or if you have a location where you can post one. I think where most of us were kids, everywhere you looked, you saw the American flag. In our city, after the terrible tragedy of 9/11, actually became what's called a patriot city. The goal with that to be the most patriotic city on the face of the planet. And I think that we've done that. And if you haven't seen that, you'll see even more of that coming real soon. So I'll keep everybody in a little bit of suspense for that. But I appreciate our elected body, because when you run for office, you give an oath not only to the state, but to the country and the city. And that means a lot to this community, because we put human beings' lives first and foremost in everything we do. We can't do everything that everybody wants us to do, but when it comes to public safety, we do that. So speaking of public safety, our injured firefighter wanted to send a message and from his family and from himself, thanking everybody out there far and wide, even well beyond the corporate limits of the city of Mount Juliet, to thank you for your prayers and thoughts and contributions that you're making to the family that'll go a long way in his recovery and the things that he'll need, and also the fine folks that lost their homes and the apartment complex. So thank you for that. That means a lot. I'd like to thank Miss Brenda Harper as well. I've known her for many, many years. I think everybody's touched in some shape, form, or fashion through suicide. And there's a lot of people that have been prevented from committing suicide as a result of somebody that was there to help them. It is something that may have been the smallest word you said at the right time that could have kept somebody from doing that, and you'll never know it. Sometimes just calling and checking on somebody, letting them know that you're there for them, means a lot. But Miss Harper is one of the most precious people I believe I've ever met. Very compassionate. Everything she does is so thankful to the city once we place the signs. And I was telling her before the meeting, we're going to do something a little bit nicer for what we did this year, so it's even better in the future. And I'd like to wish my wife a happy anniversary. It was yesterday, and it's always odd because you think of the 9/11 terrorist attack the day following. So I'd like to thank her for putting up with me. And then last but not least, I would like to encourage everybody to continue to shop our local business community, patronize our local businesses. All those monies that you put in those businesses not only help them succeed and help them provide for their families, but it also supports our city, our schools, our police department, fire department, and so on. So I usually say that every time, and with the holiday shopping season fastly approaching, they need you now more than ever. And God bless the city of Mount Juliet. God bless Tennessee, and God bless America. That concludes my report, Mayor.
All right. Thank you, sir. With that, we'll move into the business portion of the agenda, and I'll read the first item, which is 9A1, an ordinance to amend Part B of the Unified Development Code of the City of Mount Juliet, Tennessee, known as zoning regulations, Ordinance 2001-29, adopted October 8th, 2001, as amended by amending Section 2103, definitions of land use activities, Section 3103, detailed activity listed, and Section 6102, uses and structures to permit breweries and microbreweries in select commercial districts. Have a motion? Second. Any questions or comments on 9A1? All right, Commissioner Mullally.
Okay, I guess all of my questions would be directed at planning. Could we get Jill to come up? Thanks. All right, packet page 15, under summary. Packet page 15, under summary. All right, you see this amendment will allow small scale production, but if you look at the definition of a brewery, it clearly states large scale, and the definition of a microbrewery clearly states small scale. So I have a question about that. And also, let's see, somewhere else on page 17, it mentions that in the middle of the page, in addition to the manufacturing of the above products, the following activities and operations are held to be limited manufacturing. But I can't see how a brewery is limited, because it says exceeding 25,000 barrels annually. There doesn't seem to be a cap on that. So I personally can't see how a brewery is, and clearly the definition is large scale, how that applies here if the ordinance is for small scale. So I'm having a problem with that.
Okay, under the microbrewery, it is listing it not to exceed 25,000 as a microbrewery.
Right.
I'm trying to look through the definition. So
You pull the microphone a little closer. Thank you.
challenged here. And your question is on the large scale breweries?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exceeding 25,000.
That's a question that I would probably need to defer to Mr. Marquetti as far as exceeding 25,000. Can we put a cap on that, Mr. Marquetti, as far as the number of gallons that a large scale brewery can produce in order? Okay. We've not looked at that from my understanding to put that cap on, but if that's something that you're interested in, we can cap out the number of gallons. Since it is capped on the microbrewery at 25,000 gallons, and we could at the larger scale breweries.
Yeah, that 25,000 barrels annually to me just seems like a whole lot of beer.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know, because it clearly states the amendment will allow small scale productions. So
Yeah,
I can't
I
see.
would recommend putting a cap on that if that's something you're interested in. I don't have a good number to give you towards, because I'm not familiar with what excess production is in some of these larger scale breweries, but
Mhm.
that is something I'd be happy to research and get back with you on.
All right. Let's see, and this is an ordinance, so it has to go through 2 readings. Can we get all that before second reading? And another thing is for the zoning, it says page 23.
Commissioner,
Yeah.
I believe this is second reading.
Oh, you're right. This is second reading. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Well, I'll ask my other question. Page 23. Oh, number 11, which is a stipulation for 2 zoning districts. Okay, so number 11 says that it's permitted, and then it discusses CTC and CMU, which is 2 commercial zonings. And I don't have my notes in order, so I apologize for that. So it says that it's allowed in, okay, also under the summary on page 15, it says in all commercial districts excluding 2, which is CNS and OPS. Well, there's 7 zoning districts, right? So
Yes, ma'am.
7 minus 2 is 5. And then on page 23, it specifically talks about CTC and CMU. So I'm reading that is those 2 districts. Well, the other 3 aren't mentioned, but yet over here on page 15, it says all commercial except for 2. So what about the other 3?
The 2 that you're mentioning towards the end on the CTC and CMU, those are strictly only allowed through the PUD process. So that is something that would have to come before the board in order for the zoning to permit the brewery and microbreweries and that specific zoning regulations. So that those 2 in specific would have to come under a PUD process. It wouldn't be just as a standard allowance for that zoning. So those would specifically have to come before you all. In regards to the others, let me look at
It would be CG, CI, and CRC.
it looks like those are all considered permitted with a caveat. Let me look at the list here. It looks like they would be as standard as permitted in those other zoning districts as allowed. It's just the specific of the CTC and CMU have to go through the PUD process. So the others are just allowed by zoning right.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't know what do y'all think about deferring? Because,
I agree. I think we do need to
yeah,
defer it.
because I would like to get that clarified
Yes, ma'am.
on that
I'll be happy to get
small
that
and
for you.
large
Yes,
scale.
ma'am.
Ms.
So I motion,
Well, it's just
Um,
one
yeah.
question.
Okay.
Ms. Johnson, how much time would you recommend?
We should be able to have it by the next meeting.
Okay, Commissioner,
okay, a motion to defer 1 meeting.
got a second. Are any discussion on the advisement of deferral? All in favor of deferral on 9A1 for 1 meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 9A1 is deferred until our next meeting.
Thank you.
Next item is 9A2, review the zoning ordinance amending Article 6, Commercial Districts Regulations, Section 6102, uses and structure, mixed use remove restriction area. Have a motion? I'll second. Any questions or comments on 9A2? Commissioner Mullally?
All right. Again, I think my questions probably are directed toward planning. If we could, sorry. All right. So according to the stipulations, it's where it's permitted, 156, one zoning district has the number 6, the other one does not, and also number 10. They both have number 10. Number 10 is on page 48.
It's going to be similar to the discussion we just had previously. It's going to have to go through the PUD process for those specific zoning. It's not just intended by right.
Right. Okay. And again, this is within that town center overlay district where the minimum acreage for multifamily was reduced from 20 acres to 5 acres, half mile north and half mile south, miles south of City Hall.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so I guess I would just want to verify this acreage is 8+ acres. All right, and it is to, the developer wishes to add townhomes. They are for sale. And again, I just want to make sure hotels aren't included in that. I
No,
did
ma'am, they
not
are
see
not.
that. And I just want to clarify that.
You were correct.
Okay. I think that was all I had.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That 9A2 carries. Next item is 10-1, an ordinance to rezone approximately 37.84 acres on property on Lebanon Road, map 54, parcel 5, from RS40 CRC to CCG to RM8 PUD, and adopt the preliminary master development plan for the bluffs at Cedar Creek. Have a motion? Is there a second? Have a second. The item's on the floor. Any questions or comments before we vote? Yeah, Commissioner Justice.
We had conversation last meeting that prompted some confusion, and I want to make sure that there is no confusion, that the backside of this is actually a permanent exit. Is that correct?
Need representation. Name and address for the record, please.
Nathan Quinn, 402 B&A Drive, representing 4-Star. Yes, that's correct. We had 3 main issues that we were discussing that I believe we've clarified all of them. One of those was access, and we have 2 access points. Both are permanent and both are part of our PUD.
Okay. What you said there was 3?
No, sir. There are 2 permanent access points.
No. You said there were 3 issues that were discussed.
Correct. The other 2 we were talking through were schedule and schools were the 2 main things we talked about. And I think it's important that the plan that we are all still looking at is the same plan that we presented and received a positive recommendation for at Planning Commission. And the issue of schools came up and how we would impact those schools. And what we always typically do is we always try to work with the public school system to ensure that the community that we're developing isn't going to negatively impact or create a capacity issue. And fortunately, we had the benefit of having Director Luttrell here at our last meeting to confirm the kind of the status of Wilson County schools and to kind of confirm what we found ourselves, which was there is no capacity issue even when we're fully built out. And once we also try to look at it with what Commissioner Hefner and staff put together with surrounding developments. And I think the other caveat that came with that was schedule and when would these students potentially be hitting the school system. And just as a point of reference, 6 months from now, if we're fortunate to get through our second reading in October, we'd still likely and be lucky if we had our construction documents fully engineered, FMDP approved, and the engineering plans approved with Mount Juliet staff. And then from there, we still have to install erosion, get permitting before we can even think about breaking ground. And at that point, it's another 12 to 14 months of active development, moving dirt, putting in roads and utilities. And we're 2 years down the road before we deliver the first home site. And the building partners we work with typically will take about 15 home sites a quarter. And they would start by building their model homes and working through those, and every 3 months thereafter until we reach the 170th townhome. And so we're 4 years from today before the entire community is built out and before those units hit the ground. So the concern with would these hit the ground instantly, that's not the case. It's a long road from today to 170 new Mount Juliet residents and owning homes in the city. And the streets within the community are all private. It ties into a state road. The tax burden's very minimal. And what we've tried to do is address all these concerns early on, and we believe we've done that, and really just working through some details. And we'd appreciate everybody's support tonight. Thank you.
So there's a question that came up about a red light at the entrance to that. Is that something y'all would do at a later date? You would do initially, or how does that even fit into the process? Or is that a planning thing that y'all would go through the planning commission and come back with?
That's something we'd work through staff at FMDP and with potential roadway improvements.
So the actual cost per individual unit for red light, offsite improvements, somewhere between what, 7,000, 7,500 per unit? that correct?
Approximately. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And if you have any specific questions about the traffic signal, Joe Haddix from Civil Sites here could probably do a better job of answering.
If I could hear from Mr. Haddix, I would appreciate it, Mayor.
Good evening, Joe Haddock, CSDG 2305 Klein Avenue. One of the conditions imposed by Public Works and that we've discussed with them is that as the project develops out, we will update the traffic study at certain triggers. You know, being a state road, they're not going to let us put a signal in unless it meets the TDOT warrants. So we've worked with Matt and the Public Works staff to, I think it was the 50th and the 100th COs. We'd update the traffic signal warrant analysis, and the signal will be installed as needed.
Sorry? It's only if it's needed, they have to have a warrant. But I mean, if it's not, there's no guarantee. If it's not needed, there's no need in putting it in. If there's a warrant for it, then it would be required. Is that correct?
Yeah. So for instance, if we were timed to a city street, Public Works could allow us to install the signal early before it's warranted. But with it being a TDOT road, they're going to want to see the warrants before they let the signal installation proceed.
So the warrant would be created by who?
Our project, the single family and the commercial up front, probably in conjunction with the adjacent property, the Herberts or the remaining commercial out front.
Okay, I guess my question would be though, who is the one who makes the decision as to whether or not it's warranted? Would it be TDOT or would it be the city?
It would.
Director Matt White or?
Yeah, they'll have a traffic engineer do the warrant study, and then I'll review the warrant study.
You will be the one to review the warrant study.
Their warrant study that they do. Yes.
And then you will be the one to apply for the warrant through the state, through TDOT, correct? Or would they
yeah,
do
it'd be a
that?
combination of us submitting the warrant study to the state, showing that it meets a warrant.
Okay. I just want to make sure that they don't get done in 4 years and there's no light there. And then in 5 years, there's one needed. And
Yeah.
we're sitting there looking at it
And
going.
when the commercial comes in too, we'll make them do warrant analysis as well to see if it's warranted. So.
Okay, could we not get an additional letter of credit to hold until the end of the project to pay for that warrant? Or for that light? Would that
Yeah,
be
we
something?
typically do hold a letter of credit in case it does meet a warrant.
Okay.
And we hold it until it's installed. Yeah.
Thank you.
A question, you said it's going to be both entrances are going to be constructed, as the project goes. So they're both going to be accessed. The signal light is going to be the one that the signal is slated for, potentially if it warrants, is the one that offsets across from the other roadway. So going back to some questions I've had, some questions I've asked about some of this is like 2 lanes versus 3 lanes. I would rather see the 3 lanes built now instead of it being having to see construction go on after everything's built out, because that's really a lot of inconvenience for the people living back there. And you're having to hire people to do traffic control and all kinds of stuff. It just seems like it would make more sense to build a 3-lane section through there instead of trying to go back and retrofit it after the fact.
And I remember us talking about that, Mayor, and I think we've discussed this with our engineers and with Public Works as well about go ahead and installing the 3-lane section
Okay.
along that road frontage.
Okay. Vice Mayor Schmidt?
Yep. Well, Nathan, thank you for being here tonight. I will say that with the director here and his conversation after, those numbers obviously are very tight. Yeah, you are right when it comes to the 4 years, but traffic, weather permitting, and no rain delays, projects do tend to go a little bit faster. So that 4-year promise, I wrote it down, but it doesn't mean much, but we'll see how close that is. But our schools will be affected. They are maxed out with this development, not including the future growth of other surrounding families that are going to have kids too, because we all tend to, grow our families. So we're going to see that increase there, but that's not your problem on this traffic. It did come off with a positive recommendation. However, the concern from some of our departments was the back view as other developments around that is going to be seeing, basically a street view of nothing but I guess driveways and garages. So it's gonna be a really nice view in the center there. I would love to see the commercial built out because as the mayor stated, if we're looking at developing the road, why would we go ahead and build the townhomes and then build the commercial last and then disrupt the families that are trying to get back and forth? And we don't want to end up like we're already hearing on another project where we're not commercial developers. We do residential. That seems to always be the case for a lot of issues. So I'm not a big fan of this project as I was not on the other one. But obviously it's not in my district, but I'm still concerned for those residents. There was talk about the light and the road improvement. Is the road improvement in here? And I apologize if I missed it for North Mount Juliet and Lebanon Road, because I didn't see that in here. Maybe I missed it. And all that goes back to Mr. White. It is in there. Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see here. There was one more thing. When it came to that back road there, obviously, it is going to be developed. That's great. Is it just going to be just blacktop, or is it going to meet the same standards as the front road with the 3-lane? Is it still going to be curbed, guttered, and everything else, and meet the standards to mirror the other streets as well?
Yes, sir. I don't want to say the incorrect cross-section. Joe Haddix could give you the specifics, but it will be curbed. It will be asphalt. That will be lit.
But it will be meeting the same specs, just 1 lane less, correct? The front's going to be 3-lane, the back one's going to be 2-lane, but they will mirror each other with the same requirements? Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Commissioner Mulledy?
While you're still up there. All right, so this secondary road is not part of the not part of the PUD.
It is.
It is part of the PUD. Okay.
It shows it on sheet CO.02.
Okay. I was looking at the actual ordinance.
Excuse me, CO.01. It shows it as part of our CRC PUD, and it includes both accesses as permanent.
Okay. Because if it wasn't, I didn't see how, let's see, number 16 in the ordinance provide decorative street lighting at both ingress and egress on Lebanon Road was going to apply to the secondary if that wasn't included in the PUD. All right. There's 10 apartments above the commercial. You said there was 10.
Correct. That'd be the maximum. Maximum allowable would be 10.
Max.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't want any more than that. So, all right. I'm trying to get all yours. I did have a couple of questions for planning. All right. I see that and again, I'm looking at the actual ordinance. I see where the shade structure was removed from the dog park. I just wondered why.
If it's not on there, it was an error. But my understanding was we had committed to that, but there's a potential that I missed it.
Unless I overlooked it, I didn't see it in the actual ordinance.
On sheet, it shows it on the actual PMDP plan
Uh-huh. All
on sheet C1.00.
right.
And in the back of the community at the north end of the site where the dog park's located, it calls out that it will have a cabana slash
Okay.
shade structure as part of that.
Is that good enough, or do we need to have it state that in the ordinance? All right.
Back down here. We do have that as listed as a revision to this ordinance, that there was no changes in the amenity, but they will be providing the water spigot, the agility course, shade structure, and cleanup for the pet park. So it will be included as part of the ordinance. I don't know that is why it wasn't updated, but we will make sure that it's in there. I do have it listed as the revisions that were made.
Okay. But we do need to motion to have it actually in the ordinance itself, or is that?
Is in your packet is what actually planned and uploaded.
Okay, I'll
And I
check
don't
because
know
I have
when
it
it
in
was
the
uploaded.
notes. Okay, I'll make sure.
So
Well,
to be sure,
Okay. Well, then I make a motion to have, all the requirements that Jill just referenced added to the actual ordinance.
I'll get with Miss Sheila to make sure that
Okay.
we have it corrected.
Can you, Ms. Johnson, can you repeat those?
Yes, there will be no changes in the amenity other than providing a water spigot, agility course, a shade structure, and a cleanup location at the pet park.
So there'll be no changes to the amenity center,
Correct. But the only other changes were these additions for the pet
which was,
park in
which was the
specific.
water spigot, the
Yes, sir.
shade, the cleanup, and the agility.
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's your motion, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay, I have a second on that. Any questions or comments to this amendment? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're back on the ordinance as once amended.
All right. Another question that I did not see in the ordinance was the fountain in the wet ponds.
I don't have that either, but you're welcome to make that as an amendment to it. We can include that.
And how many wet ponds are there?
It's in the plan. We just need to have it ratified in the ordinance. Okay. How many? You know how many?
Would the word all do it?
Yes. All right.
Clarification.
So a motion to have a fountain added to all the wet ponds.
Okay. Is there a second to that for the motion? All right. Any questions or comments on the amendment? All right, all in favor to having fountains required for all wet ponds, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. We're back on the ordinance as twice amended.
All right. I did notice that by first reading, the covenants and restrictions was required. Has that been received?
We did provide a draft copy to the city.
You did, you got that. All right. And the tree preservation plan as well. Has that been
We're
submitted?
committed to doing the tree preservation plan, but we would actually do that as part of the plan and construction process.
Okay, because in the notes, it did say was not has not been submitted, so.
Right. We would do that when we're establishing what trees can be saved and preserved along the buffer to minimize and supplement with additional landscape buffering as needed.
All
The
right,
goal being to preserve as many as possible.
okay. Question for Jill. On page 53, it references, and I don't see this in the ordinance either, so this is what I'm going to be referencing as far as the rentals. It also references short-term, but is my understanding we don't allow any short-term rentals in the city.
No, ma'am, not unless
right.
they're in a multifamily zoning.
Okay,
RM16 zoning is the only one that allows that.
all right. Number 7 in the ordinance. At the last meeting, we voted on reducing the 10% rental cap from 10% down to 5%. I don't show this in the ordinance. And also, we approved, instead of one owner owning no more than 2 units, we reduced that down to one owner owning no more than 1. I don't show either one of those reflected in the ordinance itself.
Okay, I'll make sure we get those updates. I think a lot of it happened because of the deferral, but I'll make sure that
Okay.
we get those updates.
Because that, even though we deferred, we voted on it, so it's
Yes,
still
ma'am.
good, right? Okay,
Blasting. the Commissioner
that's in
Hefner.
here, I
We do
think.
have the blasting requirements within the ordinance.
Yeah. I saw that. Yes, number 26 under public, number 26. 63. Number 4 also says correct unit count by first reading. Has that been taken care of? Okay. I think, and as far as, let's see if I had anything else for Jill. Peace. All right, I think that's all I had for Jill. Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions for our planning director before she? Yeah. She ran away. Any other questions or comments, Commissioner Mullally?
Just one, but if anybody else has any, and other than one question and then just a comment. So do you want me to just?
Well, Mr. White, I think we need to look at the public works comments unless my copy has not been, unless I've got the wrong copy of this, which was the one that was printed for first reading. We don't have the 3 lanes captured for road A. And then road F, I believe, is the number. It's kind of where the map falls. The dot kind of falls over the letter for the road under C1 on the map, which is now on the floor. But
Yeah, it's road F.
thank you, Commissioner. Which was going to be the temporary access. I don't think either one of that's not captured as a permanent access, and we need to get the 3 lanes captured for road A.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Then I'll make an amendment that road F be a permanent access and road A be captured as 3 lanes.
Yes.
So road F, permanent access, and road A, 3-lane access through there. That's my
Second.
motion.
Second.
Got a second? Commissioner Trevette?
When you
Vice
say,
Mayor?
yes, sir. So when you say permanent, do you want to define that just because that could be very vague, or do you want to say, I'm just asking, because permanent road, well, exactly. But at the same time, I'd like to make sure we get the wording in there for Mr. White, just to make sure that
I
we don't
don't
have any
necessarily
gray
want it to be
area.
a public road. Road F doesn't need to be a public road, but it needs to have a permanent access easement.
So it's not going to be a public road,
Wouldn't plan to be.
but it's going to be for business that's right there at the top of the hill, correct? You'd want to have public road
Yeah,
for
you'll
both
have
businesses,
You
right?
have a permanent access easement on it, so it can be used by anybody in the public, but it's not going to be owned and maintained by the city. I think we want to limit our
Sure.
ownership and maintenance
Absolutely.
costs in the future.
Okay, I understand that.
So road F would just be an access, be a permanent second entrance. Is that the right, better way to say it?
Yeah.
I don't want to say either that when that asphalt hits the ground, that it will have to be there for all of eternity, because
Yeah.
things may change or redevelop or something. But
Mhm.
Commissioner, you seconded. I'd like to change that to say road F would just be as a permanent access, and road A would be 3 lanes.
Okay, second.
All right. Good call out. Any other questions or comments on this? Commissioner Hefner?
Thanks, Mayor. I'm still struggling with this, and I apologize. I know you've reached out to me several times to try to meet up on this. Schedule didn't allow for it.
Hey, Commissioner, are you on the amendment?
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Well, let's vote on the
cover- yeah,
amendment,
let's
then we'll
cover the
come
amendment.
back.
Yeah.
All right, all in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. We're back to the ordinance as 3 times amended, and I recognize Commissioner Hefner now.
Thank you. Still struggling with this commercial property not coming in with this PUD, and I understand the circumstances of why that's not happening. I believe it has to do with the landowner. It's not willing to sell it right now. However, to me, it feels like we're shoehorning a project into some land just to get the townhomes approved so the landowner can charge a higher price for his commercial land in the front. My preference would be to see this come in together, the commercial and the residential. Now, doesn't sound like that's going to be possible, so I'll have to take that in consideration as we call for the vote on this. The other thing is, when we met at the last BOC meeting, you did say you were putting in that stoplight. So I heard tonight that you're going to see if it's warranted. So I need to understand what you told me at the last BOC meeting is what you're going to actually do, or are you now changing your mind on that stoplight and gonna wait and see if it warrants it?
Sure. I think I understand your question, your concerns about the commercial. Unfortunately, we don't control that portion of the property, and and obviously, as you know, we can't force him to
Sure.
do what he doesn't want
No,
to
I
do with his
understand.
property. And the the signal warrant, I must have misspoken. It's every effort that we would make to see if it's warranted, and if it is, when it is, we will absolutely install it, and we're committed to installing it. And that's the goal. But like Joe Haddix from Civil Sites said, we do have to have that approved by the state. But we'll make every effort.
That's all.
Vice Mayor?
I just got a quick question, because again, obviously, if we're going to put some type of holding on, like these funds for this light, because it is a topic, because again, I'm thinking about the residents. And let's just say the state comes back and they say it's not warranted. And then all of a sudden we come out 6 to 8 months and we have multiple accidents. Mr. White, would that be something, or Mr. Haddix, would that be something that would be able to go, that we could be, warranted for? And then of course we go back to, how long do we hold that money until we be able to justify that says, okay, the project's 100%. The residents are obviously all occupying the space. And now we don't either it's not warranted at the beginning of the phase, but all of a sudden things change. Because if not, you're talking over $1 million for the city. You have to pick up that tab as well, correct?
Well, the condition states that they have to do the signal warrant at 50% build out and 90% build out. So basically,
Okay.
just before the project's completely built out. And it has to meet a warrant. We can't go in, or it's a liability on the city. If we allow a red light to go in, then an accident occurs after, then we can be held liable for letting that signal installed without being warranted. It actually happened on the South Green Hill at Lebanon Road signal. After it was installed, a wreck happened. A lawyer reached out to me and wanted the warrant studied. So Those things do happen. So lawyers are always looking for a way to blame other people. So so the warrant has to be done regardless. That's whether it's a state road or a city road. We make sure that it's warranted before it goes in.
All right.
If it's not warranted by the time they fully build out, then it's the next commercial lot that develops may have to install it themselves. So
Okay. All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
The second quick question, just to piggyback off of Commissioner Hefner. So, and this goes back to the developer. So the commercial development at the front is not going to be part of this and will not be built. Did I miss that? No. I'm talking about up there next to the roundabout. So where are we at with the front of that? Because I know Commissioner Mullally had mentioned that she wanted that to be completed, correct? Before the first CO. Maybe I misspoke there, but I know there was some type of discussion at the previous meeting. There was some type of discussion that there was the front commercial would be completed before the first CO of the townhomes, or did I misspeak, or how was that? Number 12?
Commercial buildings shall be completed by the 100 CO. Is that what you got? Yeah.
Okay, see, I thought that was at the beginning of the CO. So you're saying at the 100s. Okay.
Unless I've got the wrong copy printed. That's what mine reads as the 100 CO.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions on that?
No, it's okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Justice?
I've heard some concerns about the red light. Some people say you call it a traffic light. You're not supposed to call it a red light. That's a negative on the lights. I get that. I've also heard about the 100th CO, and based on my knowledge of what's happening at South Green Hill site, what kind of a cluster that became as a result of us putting CO restrictions. I guess what I'd like to, Mr. Marchetti, can we request letter of credit with a couple of conditions on it? And when both those conditions are met, then the letter would be given back. For instance, after, say, once they receive their final, 1 year from that date, there would be a letter of credit in place. 1 year from that date, if there was no warrant for the traffic signal at that point, that would be one of the triggers that would allow them to we'd be able to give them their LOC. The other one would be, is 1 year of completion, warrant or no warrant. And the other one would be that the commercial will be completed or substantial. So could we do that?
To require them to put up the light without a warrant?
No, sir. I'm just saying it would require 1 year. There would be, right now we've got it at 50% completion and 90% completion. What I'm saying is at 100% completion plus 1 year, then there would be another review done to see if there's a warrant for the traffic light. And that would be 1 year after completion, so that the Vice Mayor's concerns and Commissioner Hefner's concerns were addressed. That gives a year after completion of the project to determine whether or not there's a red light or a traffic signal is warranted at that location.
And the LOC is to,
If it comes
make
back at
them
if it comes
do
back,
the warrant?
if there was a warrant at that point, that we take the TDOT, Director White would take the TDOT and get a traffic signal put in. If the developer said, no, we're not going to do that, then we've got the traffic, or we've got the letter of credit in hand that would force that light being put in, paid for using their letter of credit.
Even without the warrant?
No, sir. Only if the warrant, 1 year after completion, only if the warrant is necessary. If
They
is
pay by virtue of their letter of credit.
Correct.
As opposed to the city paying it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you could do that.
The second part of that would be, there would be two triggers for that letter of credit to be given back to them. The first trigger would be that, the traffic signal. The second trigger would be that the commercial would be completed within the same time frame, I guess, or if somebody's got a preference on that, I really don't.
Making that a condition for approval. And the letter of credit is to back up that condition because they will have sold everything out, and done through and finished.
Correct.
Would they agree to that?
I don't know whether they would agree to that or not, but what I would suggest is that we amend this to say that rather than there be a restricted number on the LOCs, that we would ask for a letter of credit in the amount of $750,000. And that letter of credit for $750,000 will be contingent on the information that we just discussed, being the warrants 1 year afterwards. I think the red lights, somebody tell me what the cost of that light is. I don't know.
So then if there is no warrant for the traffic signal 1 year after completion, that part of the LOC satisfied. The other part is that they complete the commercial
Correct.
by that same date.
Correct.
Yeah.
'Cause, I mean, that letter of credit is nothing more than money and that they can't
A
use.
guarantee.
Can we have we're okay with alternative language for the commercial and it being tied to a letter of credit. If we could have it state something to the effect of the commercial building shall be above grade prior to release of the letter of credit. So the building's going vertical out of the ground, meaning the site plan's been approved and they're approved to.
To my knowledge, that's one building. Is that correct, Mayor?
Right now it's showing is two, but
Two
that
going
is
in.
conceptual. So it could be one larger building.
So the entire commercial piece would be being built.
Well, right now the language is shall be completed. It's tied to COs. And you're wanting really started.
That's correct. The challenge that we face with the reference project on Green Hill Road is tying the properties together creates an issue both for the commercial and for the residential. The issue for residential is obvious. It caps the C of Os for the residential builder. And the issue for the commercial is the support for their commercial building. So they're looking at it with rooftops in mind, and knowing that those rooftops may not be there makes them not want to approach and build that project. So that's the issue we're running into there. It's like a chicken or the egg, but the saying goes, rooftops drives commercial. So having the ability to have that marketing window at the beginning of the project after the site's been graded to then allow them to showcase the amenity that's in the front of the site, to showcase the model homes in the front of the site, to be able to look up the hill and see those from Lebanon Road and drive those new residents and those new Mount Juliet homeowners into that community, then allows it to be backfilled and further buffered with that commercial building out front.
I have another question.
Yep. Yes, Commissioner.
I guess my question, and I still need to get some information here as to what the actual cost is associated with that red light or that traffic light.
Today's cost, you're looking at probably 400,000. And so I don't know if you want to put a growth factor on that or what you want. So I'd recommend 450.
Well, our inflation rate, 400,000 a day, there'd be 800,000 next year. So.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Do you typically issue the letter of credit after the bids are secured? But in this case, I guess we're waiting on the warrant. So if it never warrants, there's no purpose in bidding it. I guess this is kind of
We release the LOC once it's completed and operational.
correct. But if it never warrants,
Yeah.
it would never get bidded if it never warranted. Correct?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And the purpose of the letter of the credit is if the developer doesn't build it, then we call the letter of credit and the city constructs it itself. So we need to make sure we're covered. Did you have a dollar amount? He was saying 400 and then, with 1,000% inflation.
Yeah,
you know.
$750,000 letter of credit is what I would ask for. To be tied to those two triggers. And
Well, I was speaking to the light. You're talking about $750,000 credit for the light. So that'd be a $350,000 credit, letter of credit potentially for the commercial.
no, sir, it would take both of those triggers to get the entire $750,000 back to them.
Okay.
Mr. Marchetti, is that legal, ethical, moral? Okay.
So if they don't build the commercial, we would pull the letter of credit and build the commercial as the city.
No, we just hold on to the money and they just don't get their money back until they do what they said they would do.
Okay.
I mean, if somebody took $750,000 out of your bank account, wouldn't that be a little bit of an issue?
I wouldn't.
It'd be a big issue for me because I'd be saying
You're comparing apples to oranges if you're looking at my bank account versus somebody building a project like this. So,
yeah, man.
all right. So that is that a motion? 750K for both.
As long as
LLC?
the city attorney says that is okay for us to do that and it's binding. And I think Mr. Quinn says he's okay with it.
Yes, sir. That's
Okay,
correct.
I would ask Director Matt White as well, or is this sounds like something you're okay with? Okay, he gives us a thumbs up. He's very talkative.
Okay. And was your motion going to have the commercial completed or started? And if the answer is started, how do you define started?
Remember a day when we didn't have to fool with all this. Do we have a definition for a substantial completion?
That usually happens with a certification from the architect to the owner. So if you want to tie it to substantial completion as indicated by the architect. Because usually the contractor's contract is tied to release of retainage and those sorts of things at substantial completion.
Yes. And does that say what, before we jump over here to our city manager, does that sound like is that what, have you used this kind of type of language in the past? Is that something we can use as a definition? Okay. All right. So then the substantial completion would be the word or the phrase used.
So a letter of credit for $750,000 to be released at the completion of the traffic light or the lack of warrant for the traffic light.
Correct.
And substantial completion on the commercial.
Correct.
Was there a second on that? I have a second from Commissioner Mullally. All right. We're on the ordinance now. City Manager, did you have something to add?
Yes, sir. I'll defer to the attorney and his guidance, but I thought maybe also sometimes we refer to that as a CO for the shell of the building rather than occupancy. For the shell completion itself might be another option that's been done before. But
So rather than substantial completion, you're saying the CO for the shell? Does that make it?
Shell completion?
shell completion.
You don't give a CO for the shell, do you?
Just, it gives them the ability that if they have tenants coming in at that point, that the building itself is ready to be.
Oh, because it's going to be a build out.
Yes,
I follow you.
I've got the vice mayor's over here. Almost fell out of his chair shaking his head. I don't know what that means. Oh, okay. All right.
But I'll defer to the city attorney. He knows that process better than I do.
Would that language work better, Mr. Marchetti?
Temporary CO.
No, he's talking about a CO for the shell of the building, not the contents, not the occupancy. The CO is for actually saying that the building is structured, completely structured and finished.
I'm not aware of a shell CO.
Okay.
Temporary and then fine. But
I've heard of this before, so I mean, I'm familiar with what the city manager is talking about. I don't know if we've done it here before, but
Go may have
Mr. Haddix is.
Good evening again. I think the shell would be a good compromise. For instance, we have several buildings in town right now that have ground floor retail, residential above. We permit the shell as one permit, and then you come in and you permit the retail and the residential separately. So if you do the overall shell, you know your building's there, and then the internal part of the building, they could be working on either the residential or the retail separately, but you know your entire exterior building is complete, ready for interior build out at that point. If that makes sense.
Vice Mayor.
So, and I'm just thinking about the residents, I mean, let's just say, for example, I mean, this could be a headache for the city or even the developer or the builder. Let's just go back to that. Because again, now you're, having to build something and make all that noise and disrupt either the business or the homeowner. So wouldn't you want to go ahead and have the build out all in one? I'm just asking just of.
Yeah.
Well, these are renters though, that, because these are all rental properties, correct?
I think in a perfect world, yes, you would
Yeah.
like to build it all at once, but can't guarantee that, right? With the tenant downstairs versus upstairs.
Sure, absolutely. But I'm saying these are rental properties up top and also rental downstairs. So but I do understand what you're trying to accomplish here. So, yeah. So, and that's why I'm just asking. I'm just trying to make sure that I understand along with everybody else out in the audience that's probably asking the same questions. I'm just asking
Yeah.
just to get
I
reference.
think once you get it, the shell complete and you're to a tenant build out, it's probably minimal noise. Hopefully, right?
Yeah. I guess that's where Mr. Marquetti's gonna have to help clear this up. Thanks, Mr. Martin, for dirty up the water.
Yeah.
So you're, Joe, you were the sponsor. Do you want to change this to substantial structure or shell? I mean, you proposed the amendment.
Scared at this point. I have no idea.
Well, we have substantial completion as the amendment on the floor. So
Yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it at substantial completion right now. I do understand what the city manager is talking about, and I've heard that phrase used before because you have to get the shell approved before you can get anything on the inside done, and you don't have tenants.
Yeah. Well,
so I'm just going to leave it.
That's fine.
At our definition, just to.
All right, Commissioner Mullally.
Make it clear as mud.
Definition of a shell. Does it include or not include flooring, drywall, electrical, and plumbing?
The definition of the shell is the building would be complete minus whatever, for example, the commercial, whatever build out they did, if it were a restaurant, they would have the empty shell that's air conditioned, it's complete, the facade's on. Now, if they want to add partition walls, a kitchen, for example, those would be part of the build out of that space, but the shell would be approved, the building structurally sound, the electrical HVAC approved, for example.
Just like the bones,
Correct.
basically.
Correct.
So no floor, no electrical, no plumbing, no drywall, right?
There would be plumbing.
Is that right?
There would be plumbing. It would just be dependent on if they needed to add additional plumbing for, say, a restaurant. But they would have access to all of those services. Just like a space like this, they would have to add these walls to make offices if it were an office space. You want to speak to it?
I think I can clarify a little bit better. I don't work for the building department, but we work so closely with them. A good example of a shell CO that's been issued recently is the AOS building that is currently off of Golden Bear Gateway, the current 3-story. They CO'd the shell in itself, so the structure is there. AOS is occupying the 3rd floor, but the 2nd and 1st floor just have your stub outs for your plumbing, your electrical, and so forth, because they don't know what tenants are going to go in there yet. So those are going to be sort of the build to suit, depending on the tenant that's coming in that building. So it's going to be very basic, very minimal, but the structure itself is there and can be built out depending on the tenant use and need. So you're going to have your little stub outs for your plumbing and your electrical and everything, but it's not a finished structure on the inside. If
Okay.
that makes more sense.
Okay.
Okay. City manager.
Eric, another location will be Cellar Station or the building beside the Christmas store. That building was built all at one time for the most part. They had the vacancies, and now you've got the sandwich shop and the deli and Jeremiah's. And at first you had like the Dunkin' Donuts, and they did the same across the street when Marco's Pizza went in. They were on the ground floor. Then you got the sandwich shop. And then upstairs it was open. And then over time the offices started building out. So it's a substantial build at that point, to where chances are it'd make more sense for them. They've got such an investment in it to get tenants in the building sooner than later. Sorry for any confusion.
Well, I understand. You said shell to be built out later. I get it. But right now we have substantial completion is what's on the floor. So
The shell language would be our preference for the reasons we said.
all right. Okay. Well, any other questions, comments, or discussions on this letter of credit for $750,000 to be released after substantial completion of the commercial portion is the first indicator. The second indicator is either the construction of the traffic light or the traffic light does not warrant. Any other question? So you go with the following 1 year? I didn't have that. One year of completion of the traffic light. Following 1 year completion of the project.
No, that's just on the city.
Maybe at the 170th CO would be clear. If you're saying at 100% at the 170th CO
Come up with the traffic.
for the letter of credit, the 1 year trigger.
Traffic light would stay in place for 12 months following. The traffic light would stay in place for 12 months following completion of the project to make sure that the traffic doesn't exceed what the study said it would. So it'd be 12 months following completion.
Understood.
Mayor has a pained look on his face.
Well, we're talking about releasing the commercial aspect around the term substantial completion, shell. And now you're saying 1 year after the completion of the project.
For the traffic light,
For the traffic light.
not for the shell. That
Okay.
has to be
That's why I was asking, is this just for the traffic light?
just for the traffic light, correct?
Okay.
That way, in case the traffic studies are wrong, and we wind up with a mess right there, we've got a year after the completion of the project to be able to come back and get that CO or get
Okay.
that letter of credit.
Well, I've got, my problem with the $750,000 letter of credit is right now, the way this is written, it's tied to the 100th CO. This is a project for 180 townhomes. What do you anticipate the selling price of the townhomes being? Would you say 300,000 is a
could
bargain?
It could vary from as low as 350 all the way up to $500,000.
Okay,
If
so
I had to give you a range.
well, if I just take 80, because that's what we're talking right now is kind of the cheese that's dangling out there to complete the project is 80 more townhomes, 300K, that's a $24 million responsibility. And let's talk about trading $24 million for 750,000 is kind of where I'm hanging on it.
Sure.
But Commissioner Hefner is asking for the floor as well.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this at the last BOC meeting as well. I don't know when we got off of this, but, we used to ask for a voluntary contribution to take care of offsite road improvements. Would this not satisfy that altogether? Voluntary contribution per unit contribution. I think the last project we passed was $7,500 per unit as an offsite voluntary contribution to go towards offsite road improvements. That way it's done. The city will put it in when it's needed, whether it's 100 CO, a year after completion, 2 years, 5 years, doesn't matter. That's on us to do it. But you'd pay for it up front as you're paying that voluntary contribution.
I think if I understand, are you asking about what we did on the Green Hill project? Is that your first question?
Correct. And others.
On that project in particular, we agreed to do improvements in lieu of a contribution that came out to approximately, from memory, $600 to $7,500 per unit. So we would be offering a similar contribution for offsite improvements on this project.
But it may not be warranted.
Sure, I understand. And go ahead, Commissioner Justice.
When you saying you understand, he's saying it may not be warranted.
It may not be warranted.
I can go into detail with the offsite improvements and the costs with you. I don't know if this is the appropriate time and place to do that, but we have put those numbers together, and we've worked with staff on the improvements at North Mount Juliet Road, and just there alone, we're approaching that number. And then if there were a signal, it would be in addition to.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
One clarification, I think the voluntary off-site payments are for those improvements that are identified as related to this entity. What Commissioner Justice is recommending, if I understand, is if a warrant is issued, then it will be built. But by this time, a year after the project's complete, they're gone. So the 750 is if there is one. I'm all for voluntary contributions, but to Commissioner Justice's point, there may not be a warrant. So if they put $3,500 or $5,000 per unit, it may not be used.
Yeah. I think what I'm hearing is, from what you're saying is there's already the offsites. You're doing offsite in lieu of making cash contributions, and it works out to, I don't know the total off the top of my head. It works out to a certain rate, and the signal would be above and beyond that if warranted.
Correct.
Yeah. Does that help, Commissioner? Or?
It does. I don't know what those offsite road improvements, what the costs are for those, but
Commissioner Justice?
this is first reading. And I know you had said you were busy and had to take care of some stuff. So that gives you time, 2 weeks between now and second reading, to get with them and have those discussions. If we just get through this, get through the first reading, give you plenty of time to get your questions answered. Otherwise, we're going to be up here till about midnight. You already got that mean mad look on your face. I've just seen that. So. Like chewing my teeth, my jaws. It's like you're chewing on a pencil.
All right. Are we ready to vote then on the amendment?
Let's just get through the night. We can fix this later if we have to.
All right. This amendment is for a $750,000 letter of credit to be released after the substantial completion of the commercial portion of the project and the traffic light, if warranted, and be released. If it's not warranted, then the credit will be released as the second trigger, that other leg of the two triggers on it. And that is following 1 year completion of the traffic light.
1 year completion of the project, not the traffic light. Have you?
Okay. 1 year completion of the project.
Okay.
All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Nay. So that passes. We're back on the ordinance as amended, I believe 4 times by my count. Commissioner Mullally.
I have 2 things left. We're talking about 1 commercial building with the 10 apartments above, right? Currently,
It's a maximum of 10 total units. The exact renderings of what that building would look like, it could be 2 buildings or it could be 1 building. It's just what we're showing in the plan is just a conceptual rendering of what it could potentially,
So if you split that into two, that would be 5 apartments, 5 apartments.
approximately, it could.
Okay,
Yes.
I just didn't want you to come back and build another building and want 10 more apartments.
No, we're capped at 180 total units. There's 170 units that are associated with the RM8 portion of the PUD and 10 additional units associated with the CRC portion of the PUD.
Okay, one other thing I don't see in the ordinance, it's provide elevations for the proposed villas. Has there been any more discussion on that during the planning process? And there's a reason that was not included.
Generally, those will be provided at site plan because what they have right now is conceptual in nature through the preliminary master. So we will request those at site plan, final master development plan.
Okay, that's all I have.
All right. Any questions and comments on the project? All right. All in favor of the ordinance as 4 times amended on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Nay. So this fails on second reading, or excuse me, fails on first reading, so. Next item on the agenda is a 10-2, an ordinance to rezone approximately 8 acres of property on North Mount Juliet Road, East Hill Street, and East Caldwell Street, map 72H Group, C72I Group A, parcel 12, parcel 17, 18, 19, 21, 22, 24, 25, 25.01, 26, 27 from CTC and RS40 to CTC PUD, and to adopt a preliminary master development plan for a downtown Mount Juliet city block. Have a motion? Have a second? Any questions or comments on this item? Are we ready to vote? Commissioner Millay?
Kenny, has there been a formal offer on, what our land values appraised at and property appraised at? Has there been a formal offer to the city?
No, ma'am, no formal contract. There was an initial offer made early on, which I think the commission got, but I think that they're working on that, but nothing recently.
Which was, 2 plus
Yes, ma'am.
something, and our appraised value was 7.2,
I believe 7.2. Yes, ma'am.
something like that. So we're off about 5 million.
Yes, ma'am.
Does anybody else have anything?
Was that I'm sorry, was that the only
That was-
question
that
was
was just
the differences
initial
between? Gotcha. All right, anybody else got any questions or comments on this? All right, well, I would make a motion to approve on first reading, but I would add to that on first reading approval that second reading would not be heard until we have a formal acceptance of agreement on price. Second that. I said I'll make a motion to approve this on first reading and second reading not to be heard until there's a formal agreement on price. City manager, I'm sorry, city attorney.
By price, you mean the value of the city's property
Yes,
to be included in the PUD?
yes, because my thing is like the project, but I don't know where it goes if we don't ever come to terms on what we're selling for. And it's like, why am I doing a PUD on property that we may not sell or not? Commissioner Justice.
I've got another issue also needs to be discussed here. We've got some other people that live on the East Hill Street here. And the way this whole thing is set up, the only people that have access to be included into this PUD are the people that have an immediate connection from certain distance from Mount Juliet Road. Is that correct, Mr. Johnson? Is that how that works? Sorry? Okay. The way this block is set out, all right, in this initial piece, they were talking about that there are certain properties within this PUD that would be considered. Now, there is also property that goes on up East Hill Street that should just as well be, we should be able to include them into the PUD. But I don't know if we're going to be able to do that in a second phase.
Are you talking
Thank
about?
you. I can,
I
So-
said, as the PUD is submitted currently, in the two phases, are you talking about additional properties that want to be included into this PUD, or is the ones that have been submitted currently?
Well, what I'm talking about is once this is approved, if you come in with a second PUD, the other properties are not going to be allowed to be included because it's the way we set up that overlay. That overlay has very specific language in it as to what can and cannot be included. Now, you got some people here that are concerned that their quality of life is going to be hurt. And I mean, it might be that they want to as well be able to include their properties into that PUD so that they can, I mean, obviously their property values would go up because of the commercial component, but their quality of life, not maybe what they want it to be. They're going to get additional money for their property. But I mean, we're limiting them. We're taking that availability away from them as to what they might be able to get and what they might be able to do with their property later on down the road. And I don't think that's fair to those people. We're going to change their quality of life, but not give them access to the additional value that everybody else is getting. And I don't think that's.
I understand what you're saying. Unless an amendment can be made to the PUD with the overlay, that's something I would have to refer back to the city attorney on. Because the current properties as submitted under the phase one PUD, that's something we might have to research. Because I don't want it to be detrimental to these other property owners. I understand what you're saying. Is that something, Mr. Marquetti, that they could amend the PUD accordingly?
The PUD could be amended, but this is not unlike every other PUD you do. There's a developer that has a project that comes in and says, here's my plan, here's my program, and here's the PUD I need and want. So the commission, based on the facts presented by this entity, this developer, needs to make its decision on what's before it. And if there's specific facts from adjoining landowners, either with property values going down with proof to support that, additional traffic such that it would be hazardous to everyone, et cetera, and so forth, then that's one of those factors that you take in. But there's no reason why a second PUD or amendment to this PUD could be developed at a later date based on facts at that particular time.
Well, this PUD is actually created by an overlay. The overlay does not exist going further up. So the value that is associated with this particular PUD is not the same as it would be for a second piece.
Unless an additional overlay or the overlay is extended to encompass additional property.
Which is not something we can do tonight.
Correct.
Well, I mean, we've got people here that actually their property and their property values are dependent on what happens here tonight. Because if it's one thing that I have learned about commission stuff, getting it done is one thing, getting it undone is a whole different area, and that just rarely happens. So I'm a little concerned about this going forward.
Commissioner Justice, that was something that Mr. Gardner just mentioned, that they did reopen the PUD for Pleasant Grove. So there has been something similar that has happened in the past with that. So that is a possibility to reopen the PUD and extend the overlay.
And you did this because of the same reasons that I'm citing here tonight?
I'll let Mr. Gardner speak, please.
Okay.
It was when we added the second phase with a little bit more commercial and more multifamily on Pleasant Grove. So we had more land that we then controlled. And so under this circumstance, if there was more land, you know, some of the folks that were here speaking wanted to sell, wanted to redevelop their property, we could open the PUD at that time, show a new site plan, show a new proposed program that would then be included within that PUD that you guys would have an opportunity to vote on that program, including additional adjacent property.
My question would be, is the overlay conforms explicitly with the actually PUD?
That would be. I don't know.
Or
I
is
don't know
it-
how the overlay, I don't know how y'all's overlay is worded. Is it properties that start? I know it's a geographic distance. I don't know how far deep off Pleasant Grove Road it goes. Or is it just contiguous to Pleasant Grove Road? So then we would be fine.
So, and Mayor, do we have an answer to that question? I don't know.
I don't even know that I understand the question.
I think Mr. Hafner does, Commissioner Hafner. How was that worded?
Let me, Commissioner Heffner.
No, I appreciate Commissioner Justice bringing this up, and I just want to state for the record, this has nothing to do with my property. Any phase threes or any reopening of the PUDs or amendments will not include my house. So I want to make that public. So I will speak on behalf of my neighbors, that there is certainly an opportunity for the values of those properties to decrease given 4-story buildings and apartment garages and things of that nature. The leverage that is lost with these homeowners is they don't have the opportunity or the right to reopen the PUD. It has to be done by the applicant. In this case would be Mr. Gardner and his company. So I think that puts them at a little bit of a disadvantage in any kind of negotiations that may take place down the road if they wanted to be part of the PUD and seek to get best and highest value for their property. The way the ordinance is written, the overlay is the property has to touch Mount Juliet, has to face Mount Juliet Road. And on that block, the only property that faces Mount Juliet Road is Mr. Lineberry's in the city of Mount Juliet. So unless you're part of that PUD in the back, the overlay's done unless it is amended. So I appreciate the comments. I appreciate you bringing that up. But again, for the record, my house is off the table. So, but again, for my neighbors and for those that live own those duplexes, I think I speak on their behalf. So thank you. Do you understand the question?
But I understand what you're asking is they won't have the opportunity to do it, but this is I don't have the opportunity to do it.
You don't own property on the block either. And my point is that these people up here are complaining, they're upset, they're worried about the values of their homes, they're worried about the quality of their life. But what we're not doing is we're not giving them an opportunity to be included initially into the PUD, which means that only Mr. Gardner and his company can come back and open the PUD and request that the PUD be open and amend that PUD. That gives them a lot of negotiating power over these people, and they kind of got them by the I think you get the picture. So it's not fair to them to exclude them from this PUD.
So then am I hearing you want to get rid of the overlay, or?
I want to extend it so that they have the same values associated with their homes as every other piece of property up and down that road does.
I don't know that we can just willy-nilly extend a PUD to other people's properties that aren't part of that. I get what they're saying, and the city attorney's saying we can't do that. So, what's before us is this project here. If it doesn't work, then
we'll call it the overlay rather than the PUD. So if somebody can draw the overlay up, then we can move forward that will take in those other properties. That does not exclude those other properties. But I mean, if there's anything other than an opportunity for those people to have the same value as the people up here on the main street, I'm not voting for this. I'm not gonna go anywhere near it. That's not fair to them.
Okay. Let's hear from our city attorney.
Trying to understand the facts on which you would deny this application. And thus far, I haven't heard any. And I just want to be very careful that we don't turn something down without a valid reason for turning it down.
We did that in the first conversation just prior to this. So I'm not going to use that. What I am going to say is in this particular case, we're looking at, I believe a valid reason would be discrimination. We're discriminating against people that should be included in the overlay that we're not given the same opportunities.
Sorry, who's discriminating against who?
Well, that all depends on how this vote goes. If we voted for this, then we would discriminating against the people that live up this street
Discriminate.
by not allowing them to be included in the overlay. I don't think that they had the knowledge that they needed to be included in the overlay at this point. And just because they haven't been provided the opportunity, that would mean that they don't need to be, or don't need to at least have a say in it.
Project here that's been reviewed, discussed many times for many months. I know it was before the planning commission twice, I guess. And now this is their first reading. And if the reason is it's not a big enough overlay, don't know that that's a valid reason. I don't know what discrimination is taking place against individuals who have adjoining land, which is not unlike every project that comes before this board.
We have, again, we have an opportunity here to give these people a voice and give them equal value. And I think we should take that opportunity to make sure that they're taken care of. They are residents. I'd say some of them are new residents. They probably don't have access to some of the same resources and information that some do. I will say this, most of the people in the city of Mountain Chicken don't eat, sleep, and breathe the city government and the planning commission the way that we do. So they're not going to have access to Commissioner Mullally newsletter. They just don't know to. They're probably getting an education during this process right now. So,
I mean, the path forward, are you encouraging any citizens to get with the applicants about being potentially included into a PUD?
I think that would probably give us a step forward and get them on the same page, give them opportunities that they don't necessarily have right now. But I think it needs to be discussed. Now, I mean, if we need to pass this on the first reading and give them 30 days to get in contact with some of the other homeowners and request that they be included in the PUD, then that'd be the case.
Well, let's hear from representation here. And I know because he's anxiously standing at get your name and address for the record, please.
Matt Gardner, 4603 Skymont Drive, Nashville. Just to make sure, are you worried about the overlay that the city passed several months ago, or the PUD, or both? Just to make sure I'm understanding your
Combination of the two.
The combination of the two. Okay. If we were, and we are more than happy to expand the size of the PUD, obviously that does involve a program change. And I know that from a legal standpoint, if the PUD increases, the program would change. And so the traffic study and everything else, because if they're in the PUD, then we've got to propose something to do on that property. And that's been very different than the conversations that we've been having. And we're absolutely not opposed to that. But that was kind of where we were on Pleasant Grove, is when we went through Pleasant Grove, we had just the church property, that 23 acres, if I remember correctly. And then as that happened, we had the opportunity to expand that to the adjacent parcel, Ms. Beretta's property. And so we came back through and added that into the PUD. And so I think when we did that, we went.
Was there an overlay involved in that though, Mr. Gardner?
There was not an overlay, but there was a rezone, and we did open back up the PUD. And so I think what I'm hearing is it would help me, and my understanding of the process is I don't know that if we were to include other properties in the PUD, do we have to then go back through planning commission and have a new traffic study and all that with whatever program we come up with to go on that land?
My feeling, and I'm going to say feeling because, and this is one of the things I hate about the planning commission, because when people say, I feel like, they'll be throwing out all the planning commission when they say it. My thought process is that you would not necessarily have to declare what that PUD is going to be, just the zoning that is associated with and the overlay. So that you've got an overlay and you've given them an opportunity to take and put their property in with the PUD at a later phase. So that doesn't lock you into anything at that point.
But it locks them in because we've just decided whatever we say can go on that property is now attached to that piece of property. What I think you're trying to talk about is probably better for Ms. Johnson is increasing the size of the overlay, not our PUD. Because if we increase the size of our PUD to their property, we just changed their zoning and said what they can build on that property unless they go back through the whole process and like they would have to do anyway.
That would only happen if the planning commission and then the city commission actually approved that PUD.
Absolutely. But if they didn't approve it, then we're kind of back where to square one anyway.
Well, no, they've still got an opportunity to go through the PUD process and get zoning associated with that PUD and get a positive recommendation from the planning commission and then getting the vote here.
Yeah, I mean, can we hear from them? Or, I mean, we've got some owners. I mean, are y'all interested in selling property for redevelopment? I mean, do you want to, yeah, we're more than happy to discuss with you guys. I mean, we always are excited about a bigger project. Please hear that.
Can we?
Oh.
We're going to get no.
I mean, we're happy to continue the conversations with the landowners. We're happy to try to reach out to everybody up and down that street. I mean, we're always open for more communication. I mean, the reason I don't think you got anything before, planning commission requires adjacent property owners to be sent a mail notification. So if you're not directly adjacent, you didn't get one. And we're happy to do that. We did have 2 public meetings, just as an FYI, over the last, I think one was in June of last year and one was this past May.
We're going to continue to allow him to have a whole conversation with the audience.
I mean, we're always open to continuing the conversation.
Okay.
And we're open to increasing the size of the project and more density and more residential units and everything else. That's good.
Well, thank you. I think the problem is we have a PUD on the table here to discuss, and this has got expanded into a land use overlay discussion. The overlay discussion's not on the floor right now. I mean, that's a separate issue. If
It's still discussable.
it's really sidetracking the discussion of this.
It's still a relevant issue.
City attorney.
Might I suggest the merits of the PUD be discussed? This is first reading. Then if it passes, it passes. And then between now and second reading, any issues regarding overlays or adjacent property owners, as Mr. Gardner referenced, you don't want to lock people in to a program which they don't want any part of. So that's just a thought to move this forward. The overlay is not before this group tonight. It's Robert's Rules of Order. It's really not germane to the discussion, but I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, Mayor, one last comment, if I may. I want to say, I agree with you, not trying to lock them into anything, but I also don't want to lock them out getting a value for their home that is something that they may change their mind in 6 months and say, I don't like what's going on here. I want to sell and get out of. So I want to make sure they have an opportunity to get the best value they can. And that's very germane, very relevant to the conversation we're having tonight, because our conversation should be about what they need, what they want, and they are the people that actually vote us into office. So we have a responsibility to them probably as first and foremost above anybody else's. That's all I need. I mean,
I'm just saying they haven't come to this group or voiced any concern that they want to be involved. And if this passes, then before the second reading, then another public meeting can be held and they can come and discuss. Because if that value goes up and they're still living there, there go the property taxes up and insurance rates, several other things. So it's almost an unguided missile of sorts. What's before this group tonight is this PUD and the merits of this PUD. So I'll be quiet.
Well, I don't know how to address the overlay tonight, or if somebody else wants to be included or not included on it. Like the attorney says, the only thing I see we can do is look at the merits of the plan. I totally fine for if you want to defer this, if you want to bring something back with the overlay as a separate item or what, but I don't see a path forward.
Do it.
I'll withdraw my motion. Were you the seconder?
Yeah.
I'll draw my motion then. So, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, obviously this is the first reading. This board, this developer has spent a lot of time into it. We would like, me personally, if these homeowners that came out tonight, if they want to discuss this with their neighbors and over the next 2 weeks, reach out to their commissioner, myself, the mayor, this entire board up here, I would like to hear what your next, thoughts, directions are. My number is public and I take my calls as quick as anybody else. So please, discuss with your neighbors, work through that, but I'd like to see this board get and call it a vote and see where we are tonight. And then we've got, some next steps over the next 2 weeks. So thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Mullally.
Okay, question for Mr. Lineberry. All that property behind there between East Hill and Caldwell, how many acres is outside of this overlay PUD?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay,
So you're talking about all of the
Yeah.
area back behind here?
well, anyway,
It's probably 20 acres total. We're talking about 8 acres of that.
okay,
Just
just so you know,
You wanna know?
and we all
No,
believe in
sorry.
property owners, and you're right. It's your right to sell. It's your right to keep it. It's your right to sell, to develop. But I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. As each of you decides to sell back there, back off here, it's gonna go eventually, if they get enough acreage, or if this ends up being in an overlay, it's gonna it all end up being multifamily. I am completely against that. So I would want you to realize that as each property owner decides to sell to develop. Now, some property owners may decide not to develop. They may sell it to another homeowner, whatever, but just so you know, just throwing that out there. But of course, that's up to you. You keep your property. I would want to keep it. I personally would want all that property back there to remain residential. That's what I would like. The further this goes, to me, it's just getting more and more complicated. The plan was good. I liked it. I still like it, but things have come up. For example, we bought a warehouse on Clemens. We have property on Clemens. There's a potential other 2 properties that we could be looking at. And the issue is a city hall. What are we going to do with the city hall? Do we want a new city hall here? Is that really what we want? Do we want to look at other opportunities that have come up since this time? Just again, the longer this goes on, it to me is just getting more complicated. I really would like to see more discussions on City Hall, and for the board to get together and decide and make a decision on what we're going to do with the city hall. If we're going to build it in this development, or is over there an option? What are the options for a city hall? I personally would like to defer and call for a work session on this to further discuss specifically a city hall, to make a decision. What is it? What is the best decision for the city and the taxpayers? What makes the most financial sense?
So it's a motion to defer for how long?
Until after the work session. I would like to schedule a work session. What is this, September 11th? So have the work session in,
Before our next BLC meeting?
that'd be pretty quick. Before the second meeting in October.
So you want to defer this to the second meeting in October?
With the intention of having a public work session scheduled before then for this board to make a decision if this is the best option for a city hall, or if other options make more sense.
Why don't we just say a deferral for 2 meetings? That should give everybody time to get together. And if you defer now, if it comes back, it's still just first reading. But yeah, I'll second that, a deferral for 2 meetings for a workshop.
Developer as to if there are any time
Certainly.
issues.
Part of Imagine One. Just a little bit of clarification. We have already had 2 working sessions, and we did a great deal of diligence. We had more than 3 meetings with each member of the commission. We've had all those meetings with planning, and we took all of your considerations over many months and put them into those sessions. So what exactly is it that we haven't answered that another working session and another delay would answer? As projects go down, they usually do get more complicated as the picture gets more complicated, but we believe we've done due diligence. What more would you have us provide at this point, also on our own dime?
Mr. Mullally?
Personally, I wouldn't want anything else from you. I think this board needs to look at it from the city's perspective, to look at the other properties and decide if this really is, because right now we're off 5 million, right? There's been no official offer. So does this make the most sense for the city, or does the other properties? We just seem to be, I don't know, wavering. Is this?
Commissioner Hefner.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been discussing this for over a year now. Appreciate you mentioning that. We've had 2 workshops, maybe even 3. Doing another workshop, again, what hasn't already been discussed is we're just being repetitive. I thought there was a motion for an approval to move this forward, and then between now and the second reading, we would get in a formal offer on the property, at which point we could review those offers and make a decision to vote for or against, or defer the second reading. So I want to see this put to a vote tonight, so we can either fish or cut bait. Let's let these guys stop bleeding and hemorrhaging cash. Let's make a decisive decision tonight. Give them clear direction moving forward with regards to how we come up with the value of the property, even if it's not agreeing on a number, but at least agreeing on the methodology that we use to come up with the number, because we're all not going to agree on the same number. Especially trying to get 5 of us to agree on a number is going to be near impossible. So maybe we should think about the methodology over the next 2 weeks, how we determine the value of the property, and then that's how we calculate it. So, but I'd like to put a motion back on the table to vote for approval, and then by second reading, have a formal offer on the property submitted to us. So that's my motion.
Have a second on that to go ahead and approve.
It's changed since then is
Commissioner-
we bought a warehouse and we bought property on Clements. So that has opened up other options other than this project. There potentially could be two other options on the table. So I don't, the board to me just seems to be, I don't know, not sure if this is the best decision.
Commissioner Justice.
First of all, what we do here tonight is nothing more than a first reading. Is that correct? Okay. So what we do here tonight, just to move it forward and get off of the tilt, gives us an opportunity to do what I was attempting to do with the overlay. And at the same time, it gives us an opportunity time-wise to be able to move forward and make a decision as to what we're going to do. I mean, I will, my personal thoughts on this, as far as the city goes, the taxpayers go, we're not going to get a better opportunity than the one we're looking at right now to actually have a new city hall and some of the venues that we're going to have at this location. We're not going to have that opportunity with the same kind of money that we're talking about. So, I mean, I'm given the opportunity tonight, I'm going to be voting to move this forward, but I'm also going to be going with the conversation I just had to give these people some access. I don't think we need to, I don't think it's a good idea to put it off. They've been waiting. Let's give them an answer one way or the other. And then come back and maybe have that work session you're talking about in between now and the next meeting or whenever that it gets brought back up. Just my thoughts, Commissioner.
So that your motion, could you restate that?
Motion to approve with a formal offer being received by the city of Mount Juliet for the properties, the city properties that are included in the PUD. Formal offer. Or methodology, either one.
Babe,
We
Yeah.
withdrew your motion.
I withdrew my motion. Then Commissioner Mullally made a motion to defer one meeting, or actually defer two meetings, excuse me, and then we'll have a workshop on it. I seconded that one.
Okay.
So do you want to, I think we just vote on the motion to defer first, and I'm seeing our attorney agree with that. All in favor of deferral for two meetings pending workshop, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. So that fails. So we're back now. We'll go back to your motion, which was a motion to approve with a formal offer.
Formal offer or methodology to come up with the value of the city property within the PUD by second reading.
So formal offer or methodology for valuation
Correct.
by second reading. All right. And who seconded that? Was it
Bill?
Vice Mayor? Okay. And correct.
But October 9th, which is when it would be, is Columbus Day. So second reading will not be until 10/23.
Okay. So second reading is slated for 10/23, barring no changes, assuming passage tonight. So. Are any other questions on the amendment? All right, all in favor of the motion to approve on first reading and then the formal offer to be received or a methodology for evaluation before second reading. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. So approved on first reading. Second reading will be heard on 10/23 or pending a formal offer.
It's a formal approval for the ordinance. That was a formal approval for the ordinance.
I'm fine doing it either way, but what I wrote down was to approve this on first reading. So we can, okay, we can do that as an amendment. Is that what you've got recorded?
Well, my motion was to approve the PUD on first reading and add the formal offer. Okay, well, let's call for the vote.
All right, well. I appreciate you making sure this is all done properly. So we have we'll say right now, we made an offer to, it's going to be approved with pending a formal offer or a methodology for evaluation before second reading can be heard, or the 23rd is the set date. Is there any objection to that? Second reading is slated for the 23rd, assuming we're going to have another vote here for the approval of it. But second reading will be slated for the 23rd. That cannot be heard until we get a formal offer for the property or a methodology for the evaluation, something to discuss on second reading. So we're not sitting here going, you say 2, he says 20 or whatever. So is there any objection to that? We all on the same page. Everybody voted for it. So I just want to make sure, not trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. Hearing no objections. All right. So now we're back on the ordinance as once amended.
Motion to approve.
Second. All right. All in favor of the ordinance as once amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Okay. Now we're passed on first reading. Second reading will be the 10/23 is what we're slated for, but also contingent upon a formal offer or methodology. Any objections to anything I said? And with that, I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess before continuing on with the agenda. All right. Back on there. All right, we have a quorum present. We'll call this meeting back to order. I'll start with the new business consent agenda items, which is resolution 11-1, a resolution approving grants to the city of Mount Juliet as previously budgeted in the 2023-2024 budget ordinance 2324, and amended by ordinance 2337. The second item is a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign a certificate of compliance for BJ's Wholesale Club Incorporated, 397, located at 181 Adams Lane, Mount Juliet, Tennessee, to sell wine. And then 11-3, a resolution approving a consultant agreement between the city of Mount Juliet, Tennessee, and HDR Engineering Incorporated for services related to on-call traffic engineering services, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement. A motion? Second. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right. All in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes with a vote of 5-0. Next item on the agenda is under new business, which is 12-1, a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the certificate of compliance for Max Convenience Store LLC, DBA Circle K, number 347033932, located at 11247 Lebanon Road on Mount Juliet, Tennessee, to sell wine. Is there a motion? Have a motion. Is there a second on 12-1? Is that a second? Second. Okay. So have a second on that. And I think Commissioner Justice is asking for the floor.
I am. That location's not even open yet. Is it?
Neither was BJ's. We just passed that one.
Okay, so, I mean, 11247 Lebanon Road is under construction right now. So, I mean, do they have to?
I don't think so. I think the city, our deputy city manager is
Which one are we
correct.
talking about?
We're talking about the address, which is a 11247
Is it the
Lebanon
map
Road.
code now?
Yeah,
Okay. was
I
thinking
think
of
it's
the
a
Golden
change
Bear
of
Market, so I
ownership.
was thinking- Okay. Yeah, let's open it up to a bunch more drunk. I'm good.
All right. All in favor of 12-1, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries as well. Yes, Commissioner.
I'm wondering why the next item is on the agenda since it received a negative recommendation from planning and it doesn't have a sponsor. It does have a sponsor on the land use? There's not one.
There's no sponsor shown online.
Okay. So it has,
Vice Mayor Trivett is whatever, is bringing this forward.
okay.
Yes, he did.
So it's very sponsored, I guess, at this point. It didn't reflect that it read online as the sponsor was negative recommendation. And I noticed that too. And I was like, well, that doesn't fly. So I'll turn the floor to the sponsor then, Vice Mayor.
So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Mullally, for bringing that up. I did actually speak with the developer about that, and I had already thought it was already taken care of, but either way, it's fine. But yeah, no, this project right here has gone back and forth with the planning, has gone back and forth with the attorneys, with the city, along with this board, and it's been a long discussion even before my time. Currently, right now, the lots that's sitting there is nothing but a partially gravel, partially green space that has trucks sitting on it. It's an eyesore on Lebanon Road, and the commissioners that have myself and Commissioner Justice had talked many times about Lebanon Road, wanting to improve the, the curb appeal. And speaking back and forth with this developer, which hopefully I can get him up here for some representation to talk about this to the commission about, obviously the biggest concern was curb appeal, sidewalks, and also eliminating a lot of their pods that are currently sitting in the lot. And what this was discussed was basically getting those pods that are currently sitting in the lot to putting those into a nice building so they're out of sight, out of mind for the actual residents and business owners that drive up and down Lebanon Road. This company has been in the city of Mount Juliet for many years. I would say longer than most businesses on Lebanon Road. They've been a good steward to the city with obviously supporting local business and as well as being a business that does care about their own property by maintaining it. So this right here, why I was wanting to sponsor this was because of the fact it's giving them an opportunity to clean up that lot that they do not want to sell. There was a 6-month, going back on the records, discussing with some of the different departments, there was a 6-month gap that was, in my understanding, that there was some misinterpretation for that lot, that they had an opportunity to either get it rezoned or not. And there was some, some misunderstanding many years ago. I would think it was about 8 or 9 years ago that this landowner could have, made some requests and they did not. So a missed opportunity there, but at the same time, they're not planning on selling it. So it's either going to be a parking lot for all the U-Haul trucks, or else it's going to be a really nice building to get all those pods out of there. And if possible, I'd like to get some representation from the individual to be able to discuss about what it is that they were trying to clean up this lot over there on Lebanon Road, if that's okay, Mayor?
Well, Vice Mayor, we're on the land use amendment at the
Oh,
moment.
okay, I'm sorry.
So if we could, I'd recommend saving that to the
Okay.
next, to the rezone.
All right.
And I would propose one amendment to this ordinance, and that is if the next item, the rezone fails, that the land use revert back to what it is. You got a second on that? Any questions or comments on that one? All in favor of the amendment that the land use reverts back if the rezone fails, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? So we got a passage of 4-1 on that. We're back on to the land use as amended one time. Any other questions or comments on the land use change? We're ready to vote. All right, all in favor of the ordinance as once amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? So that passes with a vote of 4-1 on first reading for the land use amendment. We'll move on to the rezone, which is an ordinance to rezone approximately 1.01 acres of property at 100 Grandview Circle, map 52L, Group D, parcel 17 from CG to IR PUD, and to adopt a preliminary master development plan for U-Haul U-Box storage.
Motion.
Have a motion? I'll second. It's on the table. Any questions or comments on this? Commissioner Hefner?
You said it's an existing gravel parking lot? Is that what I heard? And we're parking cars on there? Not for long? Okay.
It was currently, prior to them purchasing the property, it was currently owned as a, it's like storage shed company that was selling sheds there. They are parking some of their U-Haul trucks. It is non-compliant as it stands right now because it is a gravel surface parking lot.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
That's what I was
You're
getting
correct.
at. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Commissioner Maloney.
I know this is been going back and forth for a long time.
Yes, ma'am.
So everything that planning had issues with, really, is that all been worked out according to
Yes, ma'am. As
year.
far as I know, with, the planning commission gave it a positive recommendation on July 20th. There were a few variances, requested through, some supplemental provisions and variances. Let's see here. Most of them were, dealing with, the perimeter of the facility, the barriers, and let's see, there was parking, driveway aisles. Those were all approved. The only other one I think that was an issue was under the industrial design guidelines, since this land use does change this over to an industrial zoning. They were requesting metal panels on the parapet wall, but that's something we can look at site plan once it comes to that.
All right, and what was the recommendation from planning to the planning commission?
It's a positive recommendation.
Positive.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. If the rezone goes through and they do decide to sell that property, would be the worst case scenario that could go there?
You're kind of opening it up with industrial zoning, because it's listed as industrial restrictive. So some of the areas within industrial, I do believe under industrial restrictive, could open it up to like some of the adult entertainment, such as the tattoo shops, some of your fabrications, but it's more of your warehouse type is what's going to be in the industrial restrictive zoning area. If you'll give me just one moment, I'll look it up on the.
Aren't our adult stuff limited to IG? And not,
Let me, I may have misspoke. Let me pull up the zoning.
and that
ordinance real
also
quick.
requires an adult overlay, I believe,
sir.
before we scare too many people.
Yeah, no, apologize.
Commissioner Justice, was your question for Ms. Johnson?
It's for Ms. Johnson. Yes, at this point.
Okay.
You can go ahead while I'm looking up. Just pulling up the industrial zoning regulations.
What is the property behind the U-Haul? What is that? Is that not residential property?
sir.
And it's
You're
in the
correct.
county, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what kind of a buffer do they currently have?
I believe it's 100 foot.
Is that a no touch
I think it's to Scott, sir.
or is it just a buffer?
The applicant proposed a 20-foot fence from the property line, while 100 foot is required due to the industrial zoning.
I'll say it again. I'm sorry.
I said the applicant had proposed a 20-foot buffer with a fence, but a 100-foot buffer is required under industrial zoning because of it being a low-density residential.
So what is the actual buffer consist of then?
Should be 100-foot, no touch.
No vegetation? No
I
trees?
don't see the classification.
What is the standard buffer between residential and commercial?
Generally, it's going to be a D4 between commercial and residential.
What is the distance and intensity of that buffer under B4? I'm not familiar with that.
D4.
D4?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What is that distance and
And this is a PUD overlay to this as well. So
You could specify under the PUD overlay your requirements on the landscaping.
while you're looking that up, I'll ask if I may, Mayor, the city attorney. The property that we're talking about is currently zoned industrial restricted. Is that correct? Or is it commercial general when it was actually purchased and built? Do we know?
According to the ordinance, it's commercial general.
Okay, so it's commercial general and we're having to change this to what exactly? Is that
IR.
IR
Okay.
PUD.
Is there, and this is a PUD, so to the extent that Commissioner Mullally has some concerns, as well has some concerns on what potentially could be put there later. If they were to sell this, is there a way of doing this under the PUD restrictions that we would revert to a CTC or CRC or something, some zoning like that in case there was a sale of the property?
Like the
Is that
PUD's
something
not-
we can do?
If the PUD's not developed, so it doesn't just fall back to a flat IR.
I'm more worried about uses than I am, I know some of the restrictions or actually lack of restrictions on an IR piece of property versus a CTC or CRC.
Yeah, this is different than the typical thing with a PUD. Usually when people finally go through the trouble getting a PUD approved, they jump on it so fast that it's not a concern of the PUD being expiring and what they might do otherwise. This is kind of the opposite concern, I suppose.
To go back to Commissioner Mullally's questions on the uses, limited manufacturing is permitted, automotive parking, entertainment and amusement services. I apologize for saying adult entertainment. Professional services, medical, non-medical, restaurants, self-service storage such as the U-Haul, warehousing, transport and storage, wholesale sales, banking, financial institutions, general retail sales and services, administrative services. So it's a wide range. But it also opens up that door for some limited manufacturing too. And I will look up your landscaping floor.
There's also the question here, would IR allow for a car lot, used car lot? My understanding is it would actually be a permitted use.
It would be a supplemental use.
Okay.
Automotive parking is allowed, but automotive sales would be supplemental provisions.
Do what? I'm not
So you're looking up the landscaping for IR or for commercial? For IR. Okay.
But I think your question to the attorney is if it's sold, is there stipulation we can put in the PUD that reverts it back to its current zoning, CG?
no, actually, I would go with something CRC or CTC,
CRC.
something along those lines.
Well, yeah, because CG's got its own set of issues.
If that's allowable, we could do that.
And put a condition on the PUD itself.
I don't speak for the applicant, but I think I'm hearing you put whatever you want on it. I'm going to develop the PUD anyway if it's approved. So what would you like to do?
Well, at that point, we just change it to a CTC. The whole thing reverts to a CTC PUD. And at that point, he can't sell it for storage because whoever comes in at that point will not be allowed to.
And you have it under the current ownership that you don't need to do some switching between LLCs or something else to do what you want to do. Okay. So we're set with the ownership. So what was your motion?
The motion would be that we added the restriction in if this property sells, ownership changes, that the zoning now, the IR PUD that is adopted tonight would revert to a CTC zoning. And at that point, no further storage would be allowed at that location.
We got a motion and a second to add restriction to the PUD. Upon sale, the IR PUD here that's approved would be dissolved and the zoning would revert to CTC.
What about the land use? Would it remain?
No, what?
Yeah, well, you would have a zoning that was non-compliant with land use, I suppose, because we're going to do the land use that's light industrial.
Well, the land use would also, and could we do the land use reverting? So we would revert the land use to a commercial thoroughfare land use. Correct. I think that's actually what most of them are on that stretch of road that we're talking about.
Vice Mayor, is that agreeable?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we have an emotion for an amendment here to add the restriction that the property is sold, the IR PUD will be dissolved. The property will revert to CTC zoning and the land for use will revert back to what it is currently. All right. Yeah, I think taking it to the CTC will take care of that. Yeah, Commissioner Hefner.
Clarification on property. We talking about the building and land or just the land?
There's no buildings.
Just a current lot.
Just the current lot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe the way this works was this, he's got the property he has right now, the use that's on it doesn't match because the changes were made to the zoning to not allow the applicant to do what he's currently doing. Not that he's non-compliant, but he's there. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
Commissioner Justice.
Okay, so this property that we're talking about, it's a separate lot, if I'm not mistaken. Is that going to be combined into one? Being the lot and the property that has been existing with the storage units and everything on it? So it's going to be combined into one? Is it included in as part of the PUD? The existing as well as the new piece that we're talking about, is that all part of the PUD?
Name is Scott Hunter and I represent U-Haul. To answer your question, yes, it will be under one plat, sorry. Yeah. We're
So both pieces of property will then become one under the new plat, right?
yes.
Okay, and so the property that is now used as storage units and as well the U-Haul headquarters, if it were to be sold, then both would no longer be used as storage, correct?
Unless you limit that reverter to only the new.
I'm not interested in doing that.
Well, what we have before us is for the 1.02 acres, not
Right.
the whole thing. We're not rezoning the whole. This current property, just we're only talking about that lot.
But he's fixing to put this lot together with the other lot. It's going to become one. So any revision that we make actually goes to both lots.
I don't know that you can.
Well, you can't have one lot with two separate zonings on it.
You can't.
How do you do that one?
I don't know that he wants to put both of them together.
That's what he just said he was going to do.
I think he was taking a suggested, like, we want that to happen, but that I don't think is what he wants to do.
Okay.
I'm not interested in what he wants to do.
Joint ownership.
Scott, I'm talking about you personally, I'm talking about what is in the best for that area up there. And 10 years down the road, U-Haul decides they're going to sell it to they haul. At that point, I want U-Haul to go away. I don't want any more storage units on there. That area needs to grow and it needs to be able to do something nice in that area. As long as you got a bunch of nasty looking storage buildings over there, that's never going to happen. This gives us an opportunity. So I'd like to go over and stomp on the Legos and kick them out of the way if y'all aren't there anymore. In 10 years, I'm probably gonna be dead anyway. Y'all come up here and get away with something, but
Well, if you've seen the pictures of what we're presenting, I mean, it's a nice facility.
it's a storage unit.
It's a gorgeous building that you've seen
It's
in Lexington,
storage.
Kentucky to Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It's gorgeous.
You know what? Murfreesboro, Tennessee and Nashville, Tennessee, both of those mean to me, those are places I never want to emulate. So it doesn't matter. They're storage units. We voted, we didn't want those on Lebanon Road. You're already there. We've agreed, both me and Mr. Javette, that the lockbox has got similar issues that we can work together on to get this done. But you know, I want some conditions placed on this so that, you know, if it's no longer U-Haul, it goes away. Yeah, I can't get rid of the car lots, the used car lots on Lebanon Road. But if I have an opportunity to zone y'all out of existence 10 years down the road, then hey, it works for me. Yeah, if they sell. Yeah. Gino just squinted over there because he knows that was painful to hear. I know. I do. I exercise it daily.
It does not absolve you of your responsibility for what you say, though.
Again, I know Scott, know Mr. Hunter, know him well, and he's a class guy, does a great job. This has nothing personal to do with you individually, so.
Currently, there's an application for a PUD
Yes,
on one lot.
for 1 acre and slight change, not the whole U-Haul.
Yeah, I'll be voting against it then. We're gonna wind up with some dilapidated looking buildings up here 10 years from now.
Commissioner Mullally.
Okay, under the variances, the waivers and variances, this is 1+ acres. So staff does not support anything less than 2 acres. Is that correct? And the barrier shall be provided around the facility. Staff supports the 100-yard adjacent to residential. Staff does not support. And the metal panels on the parapet wall, staff does not support.
Correct.
So I assume you're wanting the metal panels. But Planning Commission approved this.
Yes, ma'am. Based on staff comments.
Any other questions, Commissioner?
Not at the moment.
All
I guess I am confused on I know we're just voting on this one piece, but I was confused on when you said you wanted to include it in are you saying that just because you're the same business and you're just adding an addition?
Commissioner Hefner.
Just noted in the planning and zoning comments that, which did give positive recommendation, should the use change or the site be converted to a traditional self-storage, the applicant shall submit a major PUD amendment to the Planning Commission and BOC for review and approval. So does that satisfy your concern? It's number 12, packet page 112. Item 12, should the use change or the site is converted to a traditional self-storage, the applicant shall submit a major PUD amendment to the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners for review and approval, and the site shall be subject to improvements. So that's already captured in planning.
Good point.
Comments.
Actually, that fits anything. Don't fit traditional.
Well, if they, it means it has to come back as a PUD amendment.
Change that.
Changes the use or?
Well, we're still actually on the add restriction, add the amendment, which is to remove, if the property is sold, that we remove the PUD is dissolved, the zoning reverts to CTC and the land use reverts back to what it's currently now.
So I want to keep that in place. So if we can vote on that one.
Do we, ready to vote on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, now we're back on the ordinance as what's amended.
If I may.
Commissioner Justice.
Okay, should the use change, this is number 12, packet page 105. I'm sorry. No. The one I'm looking at is, so you found it, okay. Should the use change or the site is converted to traditional self-storage, the applicant shall submit a major PUD amendment to the Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners for review and approval, and the site shall be subject to improvements. That is wide open, and I don't see there's no commitment there from anything. But we're talking about the site. I guess my question is, if the site has been combined into one at that time, 10 years down the road, as Scott said that they potentially would do, if that were to happen, does this involve the entire site or just the 1 acre that we're talking about now?
The commission tonight is the PUD on the, 1+ acre.
One and 2/100ths of an acre.
I want this to apply to the entire site. How do I make that happen?
They come back with a PUD to include the entire property.
I mean,
You could defer this one for one meeting and be able to see if the owner wants to do that, but right
Uh,
now, tonight, it's just
Vice
voting.
Fair, let me get your
Sorry.
mic on. Go ahead. Ask your question, please.
I mean, we made it this far for the last 45 minutes. You know, I mean, like right now, it's 1.2 acres. I do understand what Commissioner Justice is asking for, but right now, if we've done past the restrictions for the CTC and if this passes tonight, then this would give the applicant, because this is first reading, so this would give the applicant an opportunity to go back to the owner to be able to then make sure that they agree to this additional stipulation, and then we can go ahead and add that in there on the second reading.
Yes, they can.
So I'm just laying that out there. I mean, like, we made it this far tonight. I mean, like, we still got one more reading.
Okay.
So.
If we pass this on first reading and they're going to come back and redo the PUD over, are we starting over?
If they agree to do that, they have to come in with a new this. So we just voted on something that's not necessarily be voting on.
Yeah, I guess that's my point.
But it would give but it would allow the owner then to know that this commission either supports it or does not support it based on how they vote tonight.
Well, that's
another way to look at it as well. So, I mean, it's a 50-50 shot here. I mean, I understand that, but at the same time, it's also looking at as in, you know, I mean, like, they still have the ability. I mean, if they see if it passes tonight, they come back and then they say, okay, you know, like, we can put this all back in one PUD, then they are gonna have to come back and start all over. I understand that, but it will at least give. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing out some nuggets here.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody's got a motion, we can consider a motion. If there's no motion, then if there's a deferral, or I'm ready to vote on this myself.
Okay.
Commissioner Hefner.
A motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. All in favor of this ordinance as once amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Commissioner Mullally, was that a positive? Yeah. Okay. Passes with a vote of 4-1 on first reading. That will be considered, we will skip one meeting, which will put us normally on Columbus Day, so it'll push us back to the 23rd, I believe was the date. So that'll be the second, yeah, for the land use and the PUD. Next item is an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget ordinance 2023-2024 to appropriate funds for the Mount Juliet Road ADA upgrades Phase 2 project.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or comments on this? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Next item is an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget ordinance 2023-2024 to appropriate funds for the city's portion of the Northern Road work improvements for Costco Development Agreement. Motion, second. Let's hear from our city attorney.
Just quickly,
Point of order. What's your point?
It has not been properly noticed. And it was placed on the agenda without that proper notification. That does not need to be on this agenda for us to be voted on.
I believe it was.
It was brought in today.
I believe it was added to the agenda by unanimous, I believe it was a unanimous vote, so.
To be added to the agenda, but it still has not been properly noticed.
That's, well, I'm going to rule against that point. City attorney?
I was just going to say, Commissioner Hefner raised the question if we had approved the agreement, which we're now funding, and it was approved by ordinance 2023-21 on May the 8th of this year. Specifically section 4B or 4C under the section entitled, under Public Works.
This is a budget amendment.
This is a budget amendment, yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't think a budget amendment was actually anywhere on the agenda or anywhere in the public notice.
I don't think anybody's denying that.
So I'm not saying regardless of what may have been approved in any original agreement, the actual budget amendment was not part of the public notice and only showed up on the agenda today.
That no one in here is denying any of that. So, all right. Is there any discussion on this? All right. All in favor of the ordinance on first reading, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes by unanimous vote.
Actually, I abstained.
And I have an abstention. My apologies.
Thank you.
So that passes with 4-0-1 with one abstention. All right. Having completed the agenda before us, there's no objection. We are adjourned. Hearing none.